Okay, so we did part one of this video, I think a week or two ago now, regarding why God of War and DMC doesn't work. We mainly covered God of War's cosmology. We did get one comment disagreeing with that situation, which, unfortunately, YouTube does delete comments. You can actually read the comment right here, and here's proof that the comment does exist. I'm not going to put the person's name on here for obvious reasons. If they watch this video, they'll know who they are. But, like, this was removed by YouTube. I don't remove comments. If you guys have been on my channel long enough, you know that. But they did kind of want to respond to it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, go.
This comment's kind of interesting. So it says it's hysterical how many lies and bullshit strawmans there are in this 2 hour bitch fit because you lost the fictional fucking debate. So first of all, I didn't lose the fictional debate. I won it according to the judges. They voted on the verdict and they determined that I won the debate. Regardless of how you feel about the format or the evidence presented or the way in which it was presented, that was the verdict. Uh, for two, it was not a 2 hour bitch fit. Um, I was explaining all the reasons why God of War power scalers typically like misunderstand most of the way that their cosmology works. Yeah, I do have complaints about how a lot of this information is presented, but keep in mind, if I wasn't given information in regards to power scaling, or I went into the God of War Great Pantheon games and I just played it for story, or I just wanted to power scale by myself, I wouldn't be under the impression that it would be this ballad. I mean, the only thing I would probably be complaining about would be Kratos' resistances and hacks, not like his AP or speed, because I wouldn't have it in my mind that he's in this specific position and then have that specific position be debunked by a massive chain of anti-feats. Lies and Strawman, source. Like I don't know what I said that was specifically lying. I provided a massive amount of scans, and if you think I'm bluffing, like this is just the tip of the iceberg. I have so much more. There's so much more that couldn't even be like included here. Um, Also rich, rich if we're talking about like bullshit strawmans, because like my opponents didn't seem to think that most of their arguments were bullshit strawmans, and yet, I mean, they consistently misconstrue most of the points that we use for higher speed scaling, AP, and whatnot.
And in regards to ignoring evidence, again, DMC is not the thing you should be pointing that at.
I mean, like we're talking about a series that has plethora of forgery and like faked scans. Um, it's just like ignoring evidence, like yeah, like the fact that your pantheons are not separate in space and time at all, like that's kind of convenient when you're making a 2C argument, especially when there's a consistent photographic evidence of it being the case.
Also, just to say as well, you might be friends with some of the God of War debaters in the server you're in. Again, there's two sides to every story. Don't just take their side of it.
It says Kev is literally in my Discord, so to explain why you're fucking lying, dumb, ignoring evidence, or some combination of the three. Um, Hang on a sec.
So I'll actually speak up a little bit here on this one. I was kind of waiting. I was waiting for a debunk video to come out actually, because I do know that they were reacting to it as I also because I let Kevin know for this guy's sake that like hey, I didn't remove your comment. YouTube just removed on its own. If you swear in my comments, even though I don't mark them for children or anything, YouTube will just remove it. I don't get why. I swear like a fucking sailor in a lot of my videos, and for some reason YouTube doesn't understand that in my comment section. So I was kind of expecting a debunk to occur, at least in some capacity, but it never really dropped, at least as far as I know.
Sorry, I had to check something. So this sentence just kind of reiterates the first point. It just adds Kev as an explanation. Kev is not a reliable piece of information, especially since he's been shown to have lied multiple times and has provided not only been in support of multiple forged scans, has consistently sourced information or attempted to source information that has like no verifiable source, can't be reverse searched.
If I can also add something, this is the same Kev where I asked him to send me stuff to verify scans, and he sent me nothing during the debate. So
Also,
whether he takes offense to this or not, that's the facts.
I can't speak for some of the claims here. I will say though that they are fine using unverifiable scans. That being said, to be fair, after the first video came out, I mentioned in that video there was a guy who showed us, I think, some of the more like fake scans. He did say a lot of the other scans were legit, even if they can't be sourced. But again, like, it's kind of a poisoned well situation, like I mentioned last time.
What he specifically mentioned was that the ones involving the Temple of Helios were legit. I don't disagree they were created at some point. I just say they fall under discarded canon, so you can't use them anyway. And it wouldn't matter.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about that, like,
and
that's
without mentioning that the content of those things we went over gets massively retconned by the stuff in the game, even if they were applicable.
Well, also as well, like, just to finish off the comment, like, if you have something you disagree with, again, like, timestamp it and put it in like a bullet point fashion so we can actually like address it. Because this comment just comes off as, I don't like it, therefore you're wrong.
Please do not make 2-hour video movies sharing your Discord screen and failing to read. That might get you more than 70 views per video. You know what's ironic about this guy saying that is, like, before I went to work, I think the next day it already had like 96. By the time I came back, it had like 180. So it already had like almost more than double of what he stated. So like that's kind of funny.
I think the video currently right now is sitting at around let me actually
almost 400.
It's like near the 400 mark.
Yeah, it's currently sitting at around 394. Yeah, with no dislikes. So neat.
Yeah.
Very interesting outcome there.
Yeah, Zim already covered the information regarding like the curse words, how they gets automatically removed.
Yeah, they were kind of like, I wasn't even trying to be cheeky when I told Kev that I was like, hey, if this guy wants his comment publicly known, like, he's got to do this. That's not like my decision, at least as far as I know, it's not.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, but they did not take it as kindly as you can imagine by the edit there.
Oh, I'm sure. So that last sentence where he says, "Also tell that one guy to get a better microphone. He's either quiet or echoes." So this thing, this is kind of a situational situation because on the Urizen Gauntlet video that we just did, my mic came across very clear in the recording, as well as like when I watched the video on YouTube. So I don't know exactly if that's going to happen this time, but for context, when we recorded the first video, it was like 1 a.m. at my dad's apartment, and my siblings and other people in the house were trying to sleep, so I was trying to be a little quiet. So
you know, I could just drop like a little petty moment right here and be like, I don't want to hear about good mic quality when you're repping the God of War guys.
I don't really remember their mic quality, so I can't speak on it. But
well, remember during the debate that one of Kenlam's arguments, it seems, disappeared into thin air because his mic quality was so bad.
His immeasurable speed argument literally, like, destroyed itself out of existence because it like his mic screwed up right when he started talking about it.
So to be fair, I have not
gone back to I'm gonna put a pin in this right now. We are now rambling. Let's get to the actual video.
All right, fine.
8 minutes. So, I'll put that starts at 8 minutes.
So we've gone over the AP and the speed scaling, and just to kind of provide some clarification for where we put Kratos. So this is Greek pantheon Kratos. This is not referring to God of War 4 Kratos, because that Kratos under Cory Barlog's retcons and Matt Sophos' retcons, Monaco Studios retcons, basically has like a better cosmology built around it, so you can make some arguments for him getting like much higher. So current Greek pantheon Kratos, as it exists now, as in Ascension to God of War 3 Kratos, does not have uni-scaling. At best, he's like multi-continental and has like somewhere faster than light. And part of that's just because, again, all the interpretations of the universe can be scaled much lower. It's all on the same planets. We can't use the pocket dimension argument or the time and space argument. We've already addressed that in the first video. None of this is demonstrated. The pantheon is literally intended to be represented the way the Greeks actually believe in the universe. The infinite scaling for the underworld normally would work, since there's consistent amount of statements. Unfortunately, that also falls under what the Greeks believed, which means we can't even interpret that to be infinite accurately, because that also wouldn't make sense in the context of cosmology. So we could only really, go with like statements from Ascension, confirming champions of Zeus, whatnot, move at like the speed of light, and just upscale Kratos from that, and various speed feats above this. Yeah, that's like basically the best that you can give him. And then there's pre-retcon Kratos, which is just 2014 source material lore for the Greek pantheon. That Kratos is like uni to multi-uni with like infinite speed. I don't say he's high 3A because technically Chains of Olympus debunks the notion that Kratos is like high 3A, because when Persephone talks about Atlas destroying the world pillar, she confirms that all the gods on Mount Olympus are going to die, and everyone is going to die, including everyone in Elysium, when the world pillar causes the mortal realm to crash into the underworld, meaning they're going to die from one universe crashing into another. And not even like, they're not even taking the full force of the underworld. They're just falling like Olympus onto the mortal realm, which is falling onto the underworld.
Couldn't you just argue that she's like an unreliable source?
No, because she knows all of the gods. She's lived with them their entire lives. She has no reason to be lying, and no one disagrees with her statement.
What about Zeus?
About Zeus.
You really think the king of the gods will die due to a pillar cracking?
Not the point. There's no evidence to suggest otherwise. It's directly stated. It's the point of the game. It's literally the entire reason Kratos leaves his daughter in Elysium. So yeah, that's for pre-retcon versions. It would be 3A to like universal to multi-uni with like infinite speed scaling, and then like post-retcon it'd be like multi-continental with like faster than light plus or massively faster than light speed. All right, so getting into like his resistances, or rather lack thereof, misconceptions about this. So people seem to claim that, and Zim can check this out if he wants to go into God of War debate scans. It's right when it says like Redditor win conditions debate arguments. This was stuff I was going to do, but I can also talk about.
Why don't we start with the most infamous one, the petrification, where Zim can go to any of the God of War scans that, like, scan channels, and I'm sure I've got like him being petrified somewhere.
I mean, I don't know if any. Well, I mean, I guess that has been claimed. He can go there if he'd like to.
Okay, so let me go to God of War 2. I think that's a good place to go.
Sure.
Oh yeah, choose the game where my emulation ran like a fucking snail.
He's Kane, of course. He doesn't do that. So
you can also go into God of War 1 scans as well.
Okay, I already found it. Oh, you are not Kane. This is terrible.
Yeah, so he gets petrified in God of War 1, God of War 2, God of War 3.
Yeah, so he's right there, petrification. You see him shaking out a bit.
Chains of Olympus, Ascension. They all work exactly the same way.
This is not one that needs to be substantiated with a lot of evidence. Like, if you play God of War, you've seen it.
So what needs to be substantiated is the misconception. People seem to think that Kratos breaking out of something qualifies as resistance. No. What will qualify as resistance to petrification is if the Gorgon tried to petrify him and he could look directly in its eyes or get affected by it, and then like it would either take a much longer time to petrify him or it just wouldn't work.
Well, okay. So I'll step in here.
That would be an actual resistance.
I'll step in here a little bit. Technically, that would just be a higher level of resistance. If someone turns me into a statue and I can break out of being turned into a
Oh, that's
statue.
not.
No. So
That's
you're
not
not
what
understanding.
happens.
No,
So
no, I know it's not what happens. I'm just saying that, like,
no. Petrification in God of War is
Yeah.
not actually getting turned to stone.
No,
It's being encased in stone.
No, I know. I was setting up the counter argument for him to bring this up.
There is no counter argument to it. Not to people who've actually read the lore.
Okay.
It's also clarified in like the God of War 2 like novel as well that
Is it two's novel
basically
or one's?
yeah it's two's novel.
All right.
So basically you can go in there and check it for yourself. Hang on.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to find it real quickly.
Yeah, let me see if I can. I'm trying to see if I put it under petrify or gorgons.
Oh. But so Kyle kind of already
Here it is.
spoiled
Here
the
it
big
is.
reveal. Oh, here we go. Yeah, right here.
You can just type in Gorgon and you'll
Yeah.
find it. So it says details are revealed about the Gorgon petrification. It cases people in stone instead of turning them to stone, which is why Kratos can break out of it. It also makes your limbs weaker as they're broken. So I can read what this says, just for clarification. Just because we're all about transparency here.
Yeah, if only we
So
were
basically,
about
this
fucking
is
decent screenshots.
this is after this guy has basically this is right before Kratos gets the golden fleece, and then he runs down this path and he gets in contact with a Gorgon assassin. So it says the eyes on the stalks waved about this way and that as the ineffectual hands swept out for him as it slithered closer. The deadly eye swept past him. He foolishly looked and his arm turned to stone. One instant it had been muscular, powerful, capable of wielding any weapon. The next saw it numb and cold as if it had been sculpted from marble. A powerful flexing of his shoulder and upper arm shattered the stone, and he restored his arm, but it felt curiously weak. He flexed it again, drew his blades, and slowly rolled forward, ducking under the Gorgon's deadly stare. Yeah, so the same thing happens later on. He says he basically tried to scream as the gaze fell upon him entirely. His arm had lost circulation before now his entire body did. A moment of panic passed as he realized he was encased in stone, not turned to stone. With a mighty heave, he arced his back forward and brought his arms around. Bits of flying stone tore his flesh as he broke the enshrouding marble. So, to provide clarification, when the devs, I believe there is a dev statement that says, like, a normal person would just die if they were turned to petrification. We actually have context for why that is. It's not because they get turned to stone, they get encased in stone, and a normal person is not able to break the stone with their hands. So if their entire body gets encased under a layer of what is effectively concrete, they suffocate to death and they die. So they're not actually dying because like all of their organs and like their entire body was turned into a different source that is not able to sustain life. It's because all of their bodies completely intact and they no longer can breathe. So
I will be playing. Obviously, you guys might be able to tell I'm playing devil's advocate. You could potentially. I don't think this would stand very well. But you could argue that the reason Kratos gets encased in stone instead of being turned to stone, because I believe the actual descriptions do say it turns them to stone, is simply because like he just resists it and it can't like turn him completely to stone. It just encases him.
unfortunately, even the dev statement that mentions that says it encases him in stone. It doesn't mention him. It doesn't mention him being like the only mention of his like I guess like him like his what's different about Kratos and his interaction is that he'll be able to break out of it because he's no normal mortal. But it has nothing to do with like him being turned to it in the first place.
Okay.
All right, are you satisfied, Kyle? Was that can I move on to the other ones that I wanted to do?
Very satisfactory. Now, let's get to the other ones.
Okay, so Kratos having resistance to ice manipulation. This one was great. I love this one. I've had people telling me this a lot, and God of War 2's novel would like a word. So let's go see what it has to say. So this is outside Typhoon's cavern. Just to be clear, like he's just outside like the area where it is, and this is in the God of War debate scans if you want to go look for it. So basically, he goes outside the cavern walls.
Is that near the beginning of the thing, or is that like in the middle? Oh, here we go, right here.
It's in the middle.
There you go.
So basically, he says he turned his back to the gale and gathered his strength and warmth. Kratos flexed his fingers and squinted into the wind to see where he must go. Stepping forward, he found a snowy ledge stretching out into the gathering blizzard. The intense cold would kill him in minutes. So,
Now,
even
obviously, the
mind,
question is statements for how cold it is.
none. There is not a single piece of information like how cold this is. You could say,
It's a
well,
it's a regular blizzard.
now you could say, well, it's typhoon. Obviously, typhoon's causing this weather. Sure, perhaps, even though nothing indicates the weather outside the cavern is. The weather inside the cavern, sure. And he does seem to be under the impression that the ice inside the cavern is way colder, as he does say multiple times that typhoon will threaten to freeze him. Whereas he seems to think the blizzard will simply just kill him in minutes, indicating that it is not as cold outside. Now, with that said, there is no mention of how cold this ice is. Not that it's like sub-zero or absolute zero, or it's cold enough to freeze things beyond the physical body. There is no mention of this at all. So just being in a really cold blizzard could potentially kill him. And if people think I'm being like fallacious or like lying or snarky about this, Kratos thinks like the heat in Pandora's desert is somewhat hot as well. So I don't think it's unreasonable for him to think that a blizzard is also cold. You have to remember he's still half mortal. So like because this isn't like the God of War, God of War 2 Kratos. This is like Kratos after he lost his powers as the God of War. So,
All right.
yeah, then there's additional statements that he's like basically I think Typhoon threatens to freeze him. Again, no statements for how cold Typhoon's ice is. What is it? A new blast of cold breath engulfed Kratos and staggered him more with the ice pockets showed ice upon him.
Sure. Yeah, everything on this island can apparently freeze Kratos.
Yeah, hang on.
Gorgon cannot petrify unless he makes eye contact. Fight Superman with his eye. Yeah, he's finding with his eyes closed, so that should also like help against the idea of him actually having a resistance, because if he has to like
Every single time he fights a Gorgon, he has to close his eyes, and he pays attention to where they are, as well.
Yeah, so that would just be good evidence. I'll say that if he could resist it, he wouldn't be giving it that kind of reverence, so to speak.
Yes. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So I fell into a flat. So he's basically, for context, he's running around like Typhoon's cavern, attempting to like talk to him, while he's also trying to like get the bow from his eye so that he can free Prometheus. So it says he took a step out, ducked back as Typhoon's icy escalation threatened to freeze him where he stood, and then he ran at top speed up the bridge he created. Ice beneath sandals made the short journey treacherous, but he reached the flattened spire. He saw he dared not hesitate. Typhoon sucked in a deep breath. If the Titan exhaled, Kratos would perish, flash frozen. So we have two direct statements that it threatened to freeze him and he would perish immediately. Not just he would be flash frozen, that like if he was frozen, he would be dead on contact with this ice. And if you think like I'm being also just like missing some context for this, maybe this is like just God of War 2 Kratos, like, right? So it wouldn't apply. I have scans for Ghost of Sparta Kratos, who is the actual God of War. So he would scale higher than every non-God of War version of Kratos, which I don't include, like, I also include, like, end of God of War 2 Kratos and God of War 3 Kratos as God of War versions, because he does get back the same level of strength he had as the God of War. So it would only be fair that he would scale 2 or above Ghost of Sparta Kratos. And if you watch these little clips, he is fighting the Harpies, and
Which one
even
again?
with the yeah, so it's right below the three novel scans of lack of resistance to ice manipulation. And it just says basically the arms of Sparta doesn't protect Kratos from being frozen by the ice harpies.
Is that on your debate scans?
Yeah.
Okay, let me scroll down here. Here we go.
Yeah, so it's just a 5-second clip. I had Kyle go and get this for me, but basically I was just trying to show that the Spartan The Spartan arms, which does have the ability to stop hazardous conditions in the environment, both extreme heat and extreme cold, cannot stop the harpies, and Kratos gets frozen rather quickly.
Okay, here's the lack of resistance manipulation. Let's see this clip.
Then there's also the he
Freezing.
can't block the winds of Boreas.
Freezing.
He has to use the Spartan arm shield. This is also God of War Kratos. So this is like one of the strongest versions of Kratos, and he just gets frozen by an ice wind.
Yes.
And he has like no stated descriptions for how cold it is.
Now, to be fair, if it can freeze a human being in a couple seconds of just touching it, it's clearly not your like. It's probably a little colder than your average things.
Oh yeah, but like I'm pretty sure the temperature for what it takes to freeze a human being is not like. I believe you can even get into sub-zero temperatures, and it's still enough. You don't need to go to absolute zero.
Let me actually look that up real quickly, see if we can get a number.
It can vary because it depends. Like, I don't think there's ever been a recorded case where a human being has gone outside and it's been so cold that they've been frozen into a block of ice.
So if we take flash freezing into account, negative 196 Celsius.
What is that in Fahrenheit?
That would be negative 320 in Fahrenheit.
Yeah, so that's not nearly enough. Absolute zero is like negative 430 something. So he wouldn't even be able to survive absolute zero freeze temperatures.
Yeah, absolute zero is 459 minus 459.
Yeah, so
what's that in Celsius?
217.
Good.
Dude, we're not going to use Celsius. Get out of here.
Use the correct measurement.
My apologies. My apologies. I made a mistake there. It's 273. My bad.
Oh my gosh. So you can see in the scans I posted, the two scans I posted below for the two enemies that can also freeze Kratos, the Boreas Spawn and the Harpy Widow, which is the Harpy Widow is the ice harpy that I mentioned. Yes. All it says in its description is that these creatures employ diving attacks but prefer their icy breath to stop targets dead in their tracks. Stay out of the way of these pesky Avaries and batter them out of the sky when in range. No mention of how cold the ice breath is.
And then there's Boreas's spawn, is what it shows here.
So it says, Boreas's spawn separate from the mother and hatch, born ready for battle. Underdeveloped as enemies, they are fierce and fearless despite their immaturity. Avoid letting them prod Kratos into a corner, leaving him in a position where the dredge of Boreas can take advantage. Use grab attacks to toss them out of the immediate attack range. Aside from their basic ram attack, they also perform a self-sacrificing somersault. If successful, it leaves Kratos frozen in place. Either way, the creature perishes. No mention of this or how cold this is.
Yeah, so again, like being generous and looking up actual actual numbers. It's clearly
they're also straight from the guidebook, which is the only.
Mangler, cutting out a little bit. Leave and rejoin. Yeah, so looking at the numbers though, it is obviously, if he's freezing this quickly, going to be very cold. I'm sure there's a calculation for it somewhere. Let me see if I actually can't find it.
The point is that his ice resistance is not significantly different from normal humans. We could say it's like slightly better, sure, but the problem is that this ice that's freezing him instantly is happening when he's the God of War. So he should have better resistances and powers than his non-God of War counterparts. I don't think anyone who's watching this, regardless of how you feel about what I'm saying, I don't think you would disagree with that. I think you would fully support the assertion that the God of War variants would have better resistances and abilities than the non-God of War versions. It would be illogical for you to assume otherwise, since they scale higher.
Yeah. At that point, it'd be a little. Well, so the only argument you can make to try and help out Kratos is you can argue the ice is just way colder than that. He is resisting it, but there's no scans to back that up.
Well, so you can make arguments, but there's no evidence for these arguments to be substantiated.
Yeah, so like there's nothing to really help out beyond that point.
So this is sort of like a lot of these are just under win con debates, but this is sort of ties into resistance to like soul manipulation. So Kratos does have some resistance to soul manipulation, but some people seem to be under the impression that he like I guess that he won't die if his soul gets extracted. We actually have a direct video of what happens if Hades
Yeah,
extracts his soul directly.
I'm showing it right now on screen.
And he just dies. Now, you may think, well, that's just a gameplay mechanic. And it's just like, well, the guidebook doesn't seem to think that, because the guidebook literally describes it as just, you know, yourself. It says, when you head inside, Hades has a frank conversation with Kratos. Afterwards, he'll try to rip the soul out of Kratos' body. Alternatively, press L1 and R1 to save yourself. So, I mean, I don't see any other reason.
Okay, so Mangler seems to have cut out there for some reason. So what Mangler's saying is that there's no other real reason to doubt the loss of.
Seems pretty cut and dry to me.
Yeah. Now that being said, there are some quick time events in games that are very absurd. If you look at the actual power scaling, like in Bayonetta, when she dies, like being thrown into a building, you know, from the helicopter or from the airplane. Like there are some absurd ones, but this one is your soul being ripped out, and we've never seen Kratos like survive without it.
So in order to provide a quick time event that has like an inconsistency, you need to provide scaling that would provide counter arguments. Otherwise, there's not really any scaling that demonstrates this.
Yeah.
What's worse is that this is God of War 3 Kratos, so he scales above all the other versions.
In fairness, this is Kratos after he just took a dip in the river Styx, so he's lost most of his power.
Yes, but he is fighting Hades at this point, who he's capable of killing.
Yes, the normal human Kratos proceeds to later on slam Hades into the wall or into the roof over and over again.
Is that he's fighting the third strongest god in the pantheon.
Are we sure about that?
Some people even argue he's stronger than Poseidon because he's the only god that actually gets stronger, because he absorbs souls and gains power from them. But regardless of what you argue, he's top 3, bare minimum, and Kratos still kills him. But this attack can still kill Kratos.
Yes.
So that Kratos would still scale way above all the other versions. Easily. At least all the other versions prior to this, except for the beginning of God of War 3. That's not true. He cannot survive his soul being extracted. This is more so the lack of self-sustaining biology. This is something that's just like, I don't think people seem to forget this.
Mangler?
Buddy, are you there?
This is what happens when he gets greedy. See, this shit happens immediately when he decides to get greedy.
There we go. It's back.
Alright, continue, Mangler.
Yeah, so Kratos in the God of War 1 novel confirms that when he's in the basically when he's in the grave of the ships, he says he's been 2 days without water. His mouth is drier than the desert of lost souls, and his tongue is swollen. It would have gladly traded for the water before a deal could be made. The captain of the merchant man, I caught a glimpse of him and decided a wiser choice was to flee, as all the hounds of Hades had bayed at his heels. So, even at this point, his tongue is completely swollen, and he should be dehydrated. And he's, like, he clearly does need water to some degree, and that's not the only scan, like, we have of this. There's also scans when he's in, like, Pandora's Temple, where he also requires, like, right when he shows up, where he asks him where the food and the meat is.
Now, I'll ask, that's only for human Kratos, though, right? That's not for God Kratos?
No. There is direct statements that God of War Kratos does not need to eat.
Okay.
But this applies specifically to at least half the Kratoses we're talking about. And the reason why I mention this is because the one for the debate that I was using was Ascension Kratos.
So this would apply to Ascension.
Yes, so this is the weakest version of the human Kratoses that exist. Furthermore, he also has a lack of resistance to corruption and stamina drainage. So in God of War 1, he can also have his like stamina drained and his energy drained just by making contact with magic sources, as when he goes to fight the undead legionnaires. He basically what's it called? He swings the blades of chaos.
In case you guys are wondering why Mangler's kind of like running the show here for the most part, it's because, well, I didn't do any of this research. This was like more or less all Mangler and Kyle. And Kyle's currently just eating something, I think.
Eating pop.
No, I'm done. I just have nothing to add.
Oh, look
Yeah,
at that.
just
He has nothing to add.
yeah. So he says, this is for context. Kratos is basically getting Emperor. You can go and check in the Battle War debate scans. It just says lack of resistance to corruption, and under this picture, basically it says that he fastened the armor barely in time when the two more legionnaires attacked, and they held out these held out magic shields. Kratos let out a cry of rage as he retaliated. The blades of chaos bounced off the shield of the lead undead and caused Kratos to stagger back. This instant imbalance provided the opening for both legionnaires, holding their gold glowing shields high. They charged. Kratos fought for his life. More than providing protection from the blades of chaos, those shields drained his strength. Every blow he landed sapped his power. So, two direct statements that making contact with just magic shields that have no specification of what their spells are from a couple fodder undead legionnaires can drain his energy. So,
Would this be human Kratos or would this be God of War Kratos?
this is God of War 1 Kratos.
Okay, so still human Kratos.
Yep. Then here's the big one. Kyle, I'm sure, has a lot of words about this one. A lack of resistance to madness, manipulation, and illusions. Mainly illusions. So, I have been told that illusions don't work on Kratos because of Ascension. And because he has the Oracle's eyes. So he can see through the dark magic of the theory, ergo he can see through the illusion. I don't know if the people who made these claims actually played the game, but I did. And Kratos confirms multiple times when he's going through the game that all he sees is illusion. He has a direct statement near the end of the game to the Oracle where he says, like, how could I defeat the Furies if all I can see is illusion? Because they're constantly blasting him with illusions at every moment, and he has no way to interpret or differentiate between like what's real and what's not.
Hang on, I'm trying to show the cutscene where he's talking to the Oracle, but I'm trying to see where that scene's at.
Yeah, it's your thoughts in your
Well,
mind. Like,
also, like, aside from Ascension, if you want to use something, say, post-3, in the Fallen Gods comic, where he goes to Egypt, he is literally insane and going insane consistently.
or rather, what's worse is that he makes statements where he says he is not able to tell the difference between like what is real and what is not, because the gods that he meets there are constantly like teleporting and moving around in certain scenes, so he's not able to tell if they're hallucinations or not. What's worse is that
There it is.
in the the sex dungeon illusion, the Spartan ceremony illusion, the second Sparta house illusion, the neck illusion. Well, actually, like I think only these first three. Kratos does break out of the illusions each times. But you want to know what's funny about each of these circumstances?
Oh, son of a gun! I shouldn't be playing that. Let's go to the Spartan one.
So when he breaks out of these, every single time you'll notice that he's not at all confused by what's going on. He's completely entranced by the illusion, and then once he spots the ring on the Fury's neck, who keeps like leaving it there for some reason, he's able to break the illusion immediately because he recognizes that something doesn't belong there, and he wakes up immediately. There is consistency among these things because it happens 3 times in the game. And each time the illusion is working perfectly fine.
Except there's one part of their body they can't like change.
Well, to be more accurate, the Furies are fucking idiots, and they chose not to hold any because in the so in the sex dungeon illusion, for example, when you see him go in there and he sees like all these women and he's like walking past one of them,
Yes, I'm
just
gonna
follow
censor that later.
yeah, further into the room. Basically, if she had that ring on anywhere, if she just had it on the other hand, she would have been fine. She would have been fine for a couple more seconds.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the Spartan one, and he sees the ring on her finger.
And only then does he react. He's completely fine for an entire minute up until that point. What's great about this is that as soon as he drops her on the ground, he can't even tell that the fury that he dropped on the ground is an illusion. So he's in an illusion within an illusion, and he couldn't tell that either one of those were like not real because he immediately reacts to the fury that casts the illusion when she's up on the right side. So he only realizes that like, oh, that wasn't the real one until after he attacks her.
I'm currently showing them the
My
Spartan home
ass.
one, I think.
Well, Mangler can answer this question for me because he actually played Ascension, and it's been a good couple of years since I have. With the Oracle's eyes, doesn't he have to hold them out like a lantern?
Oh yeah, so we're hang on, let me see if I have that here. If not, I have scans of it in the actual like.
Oh well, if people want to know like where to find it, just look up the last boss battle of Ascension.
Let me see if I yeah, it'll be in God of War Ascension scans. Let me see if I can go grab those.
Yeah,
So
like he's literally kissing his wife right now, and then he sees the ring, and then he's like, "Oh wait, no, this is an illusion."
so basically, the the eyes of truth do not give Kratos a. It is a massive misconception that Kratos can see through illusions because he is the eye of truth. They do not give him like a passive immunity to illusions. Not even to illusions in general. What their specific ability is intended to do is to dispel the magic of the Furies. Now,
Do you have like the scan for that somewhere, or like is that
yeah.
on this
So in Ascension's God of War Ascension scans, it literally says in its description, "Pass from the Oracle to Oracle, these eyes can see through the dark magic of the Furies." That is its direct statement.
Here we go. Yeah.
And
Pass from
in
Oracle.
when you scroll up to the eyes of truth, it specifically says like when he uses it, um, he literally has to pull it forward. He has to pull it out of his back pocket and shine it on the object in question to disable it. That is the shittiest illusion resistance I have
Well,
ever seen.
Well, I mean, he's beating the shit out of this bird. I don't know what you're talking about.
well, if I remember correctly,
I
with
don't
the
even
boss
look at this
battle,
right one then.
so if I remember correctly with the final boss battle when he's fighting the giant hentai tentacle monster,
Gotta be a little more specific.
as soon as he stops shining the eyes on a certain point, it goes back to being an illusion, doesn't it?
Yes, he has to do it multiple times. So, also, when he, like, some people also seem to be under the impression that the Furies, like, reality warp everything when they do this. So, they change reality, but they do not change it permanently. It's all just fake. Because as soon as like the person casting the illusion is either killed or it's dispelled by like the oracle, all of the surrounding environment and everything that's there is completely and totally intact.
Yeah, that's actually I'll talk a little bit. One of the problems I had when the God of War guys and me talked about it, where they brought up a scan saying that the illusions were reality warping, I'd bring up that like, but we clearly see everything returns to normal afterwards, and that it also doesn't really change anything physically. It just like coats it over it with a new skin.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Oh yeah, true.
But like, that's kind of how this works when you make a lot of bold claims that are directly contradicted by evidence in your own game. Again, I don't think this would be a problem if someone was just taking the most reasonable interpretation of it, but like for some
Well,
reason, God of War
in
guys,
fairness, like the petrification one, if you didn't have access to the novel, you would never assume he was being encased in stone.
understand that for most of these, they're from the games, so there's not really an argument. As for the madness thing, this is less. This isn't a madness manipulation. Like obviously, Kyle's mentioned like greater versions of him are affected by it. Ascension Kratos, the one that we would be using, like by the event of the end of the game, he remembers what he did to his family once he broke the blood oath with Orcos. And if you guys want to know what that does to him in God of War One, I have 6 different individual feats, and I say feats, I guess instances we'll call them accidents, of Kratos literally having a nightmare and his mental like capacity breaking down to the point where he becomes like basically like a child in a fetal position uh, because of like the nightmares of what he did to his family.
Are we talking
And
about the same God of War here?
we he does this in God of War 1, so I understand this is 10 years after dealing with the trauma. However, that's the trauma that he experienced right after, like, that's the trauma he experienced after he remembered it once he broke the blood oath. So I'm arguing that if he would be completely and totally susceptible to madness manipulation, especially since he seems to be under the impression that he's going mad during the events of the Ascension due to what the Furies are doing to him. And we know he definitely goes mad by the events of God of War 1 because he has 6 of these episodes. Like, in fact, one of the instances, and this will kind of lead into the next point I was going to say, is that he's he's literally, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but in the God of War 1 novel as well as in 2's, he's also affected by the Siren song, and he's literally pulled into the hypnotism, and the only way he's able to break out of it is because he activated Zeus's not because he activated Zeus's thunderbolt, because when he's being hypnotized by the siren, he actually remembers the siren as his wife, but the trauma causes him to have a nightmare, and that breaks his mental state, which causes the hypnotism to not work because it targets the brainwaves, which allows him enough time to throw Zeus's thunderbolt, thus basically deafening him. So it
Is
doesn't
this going to
actually
be a
work.
consistent theme where you're just going to say he remembers his dead wife?
I'm sorry.
In the God of War.
I must.
Alright.
Let me see if I can...
That's also, isn't that also like very explicit in the novel? Is that like he keeps throwing the thunderbolts that continuously deafen himself?
Yeah, so he says, he saw the siren for what she was, and she sang to him, singing a melody so lovely and beguiling. He knew she wanted him above all others, but she's not my wife and daughter. Those memories hammered as at Kratos' mind, even as he felt bites. More love bites. The pain offset the pleasure. He had known so much pain, and he concentrated on it. His wife and his daughter lying at his feet. Again, he pushed away with this and heard other voices. Shit, you were greedy, hungry. We were all hungry. You must give him to us. The voices turned stricken, and the lovely, lovely melody faded in his ears. My wife, my daughter. Kratos lifted his hand and felt the energy flow. The thunderbolt of Zeus built, but against his lover, his loving, caring lover, he couldn't. And then it basically mentions that he reaches deep down into his visions and nightmares, powering his determination. The thunderbolt erupted from his palm, a force greater than anything he had ever felt, lifted him up from his feet, and threw him high into the air. Also showcasing that he is not immune to damage from his own magic attacks. He can be harmed from abilities that he's received from the gods as well. So if anyone wants to say,
Wasn't that also one of their points was like Kratos was immune to the siren song?
yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the arguments, yes.
And this is, the funny thing is...
Which to be fair, they show in the novel where it's from. They just don't have the previous page where the context comes from.
Yeah, no, because they were fucking lying. They were dishonest pieces of shit. They took one scan, they're like, hoo-hoo, like, here's him being resistant, and I'm like, yeah, you skipped the entire page showing that he literally gets put under the song, as I'm reading to you right now. And then what's worse is that he says he shook himself, this is after he gets lifted by the thunderbolt. He shook himself and stood aware that he destroyed only a few of the creatures with the power of Zeus. 3 other sirens rushed at him. Kratos had never seen creatures so loving or lovely, but he did not fall under the spell. Within a moment he understood why. The sirens had begun to fight over him. His hand went to his neck and found fresh bite marks, all breathing freely. His nightmare's vision had allowed him to break their spell to fight, and when he had blown them apart with Zeus's lightning, the thunder had partially deafened him. He might not have the beeswax that Odysseus carried, but he had a makeshift method of temporarily blocking the siren's call. His hearing was already returning, though, had he waited.
Is that from God of War 1's novel, or is that from God of War 2's?
That is from God of War 1's novel. This is when
he's in the
Desert of Lost Souls. That is so blatant that, and the scan that they provided actually goes a paragraph down from this and completely ignores the information mentioned there.
Here we go, yeah. Kratos puts out Siren's song because his nightmare blocks by deafening Zeus lightning bolt, falls into effects of Siren's spell. Boom. Yeah, because I had the God of War 2 thing open, and I'm like, he's reading a lot more than what's going on there.
Yeah. He also says he just launches on a thunderbolt. Basically, you guys get the idea. Point is that he's very clearly capable of blocking hypnotism without side effects. But yeah, so that's two examples. I just put like a lack of resistance erasure can be exploited. There's no statements or evidence that he can survive existence erasure. Um, Lack of resistance to BFR can be exploited. Yeah, so he gets BFR'd twice in the novel. He gets BFR'd by Aphrodite to go find Medusa. Now, technically, you can sort of kind of take this out because in God of War 1, he doesn't actually get BFR'd anywhere in the game. He just goes up to this room, and then Aphrodite is just like, "Kill Medusa, bring me Medusa, the head of the Gorgons, and her power shall be yours," or something.
That's a really fucked up story when you know the lore behind those characters.
Oh yeah. So technically, this is a bit of an inconsistency, but this one isn't though. So Ares BFRing him is completely par for the course.
Yes, that directly occurs in God of War 1.
Lack of resistance to sealing can be exploited. Yeah, there's nothing that happens there. Lack of so this is one that you guys probably are not aware of. Lack of night vision. So Kratos can't see in the dark. I don't know how many of you know that, but I mean you might have already figured this if you play God of War 2, because he just can't see the last Spartan, which is one of the examples I'm going to use here, but there is another one as well.
Night vision can be exploited right here. Oh, here, let me show you.
Yeah, so he basically says this is on the way to the Phoenix. He says the walkway entered a room opening up on the sea. The Phoenix in the palace, but otherwise in utter darkness. But Kratos sensed another being near even before he heard. I have come too far to fail. And it just says like he drew the blades of Athena and swung around him in time to meet a sword with a quick parry. His opponent, cloaked in darkness, peppered blows with a fist along with a sword attack. Yeah, so very clearly can't see through the darkness. Doesn't know what's going on. And the next page further elaborates when he just kind of like basically blows through the wall. Hang on. So it just mentions the fight itself. Nothing about him seeing or not seeing, but that information I provided already proves he can't see. So
yeah, and again, like it's actually
there's actually one more like super blatant statement about this in one itself.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. So it says the man grappled as quickly as the fight began, it ended. The man grappled with Kratos and wrenched him about. Kratos drew his sword and lunged, locked together. As they plunged through an interior window, fell 2 stories, and landed hard in the center of a large porch overlooking the ocean, surrounded by shards of glass above. Kratos started to twist the sword he had buried in the man's gut. Then he saw his opponent clearly for the first time. Kratos slid his sword from the soldier's torso. The soldier looked up, clutching Kratos' sword, which had run to his chest. "My lord, in the darkness I didn't recognize you. I saw this."
Can I just say, the soldier has no excuse. Kratos fights with chain swords. How did he not realize he was fighting Kratos?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. That one was a little bullshit to me. Like,
I know people could just go up and watch 2 like cutscenes, but we have that as well. If you want to see what the in-game version of that.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, no, I already showed it, but I'll show it again.
So do you want me to cover the one, the super blatant one that's in like God of War 1?
I just love the way the soldier says
context
it.
for it, and you can go into this. So Kratos, when he goes into Pandora's temple, he finds various challenges for some of the gods to go through the temple, obviously to like test his might, his mettle, and his mind. And in the Hades one, there is like a button prompt for like investigation in a dark room at the end of the corridor, and Balrog would like to explain it further.
So there's a corridor which, again, you need to do a puzzle so you can shine light. But if you actually go up to this dark corridor, Kratos just says, "I can't go any further as I can't see." This also ties into like kind of culturally ancient Greek, just ancient civilizations in general, like really feared the dark. So it makes perfect sense for why he wouldn't just like aimlessly wade his way through the dark.
It's also just like a blatant scan. It just says you were unable to go any further. It is too dark to see. It's just like, well, yeah. I mean, there's consistency between two stronger versions of Kratos here. So why would Ascension, like again, Ascension Kratos doesn't demonstrate any feats of this? Like, see, the thing that like I guess hurts Ascension Kratos the most here is that he's weaker than these versions, and these lack of resistance feats are for stronger versions of himself that he has like no way to defend against as far as like evidence.
Yeah.
And then lack of resistance to time manipulation. We kind of explained this in the last video, but obviously in the Pollux caster fight, he literally gets affected by all of their abilities. And I have the two videos there as well. Like every single one of them is completely capable of affecting him.
Yeah, you can see
So-
right here. He's being slowed.
Should we move on to the poison or fire?
Hang on, we're getting down there. So lack of resistance to fear manipulation, no resistance to fear manipulation. Lack of resistance to durability negation, no resistance to durability negation. No statements or feats of this. Lack of resistance to deconstruction. So this technically goes into fire as well. For people who are wondering if Kratos has fire resistance, he kind of does, but kind of doesn't. So in God of War 2's novel, I'm sure you guys are aware from God of War 2 game that there are different variations of the Cerberus monsters. So Kratos makes contact with the Cerberus breeders when he's going through the Isle of Creation, where the Sisters of Fate are, and it says in this scan provided here that he basically he's fighting the Cerberus, right? And it says Kratos threw himself backwards at the last possible instant and only endured a hard blow to the chest, hardly more than a soldier's fist wrapped in a chain might give. He recovered and saw a new attack. The Cerberus reared back on its hind legs and spat forth a fireball. Kratos turned aside and the deadly fire passed by him. So keep in mind, like, he doesn't ever get hit by this fire in this fight. He avoids every single one of them, and his only description for what it is that it's deadly to him. So he's convinced that it will probably mortally wound him or could put him near death's doorstep. Now, if you want clarification for how hot that is, look no further. I actually have scans from God of War 2's guidebook, and it specifically says that the heat of this thing is molten fire. So hot heat that is not even like the full extent of what a lava, like a volcano, like lava or whatnot, can dish out, is enough to be deadly to Kratos.
And just to be clear here for a minute, is there any way this could obviously just be like, you know, a phrase, or like, you know, like it's just like hyperbolic wording, so to speak? Like
Kratos is an ancient Greek Spartan. In his mind, when he has his like dialogue, he never makes jokes, ever. Like he almost the only time he ever chuckles is when people are being like arrogant about something. This is a beast that he's trying to fight and kill. He has no reason in context to be joking or making metaphors about this stuff.
well, so what I'm asking here is like, could molten fire like just be like not like 100% accurate to how hot the flame is? Like, could that just be like phrasing, or is like any evidence that like these demons would
If you think it's phrasing, then that would make it worse. I'm taking it at a blatant statement, and I'm assuming it's as hot as molten fire. So, if you don't, then he has no fire resistance at all. If you do, then that means at least molten fire can kill him.
Now, hang on, Mangler. By saying that, some people would be pausing the video and typing, "But what about the Phoenix?"
Oh, we'll get to that. Hang on a sec. Right below this, this is going to be a beautiful one. So right below this, he basically has. He also has examples of. So he gets scarring from. He basically gets scarring from the fire caused by Ares' fire on his back when he gets hit by the AoE like splash damage. And this causes scarring on his back that doesn't get healed until he makes contact with the Zeus Thunderbolt to basically like regenerate energy and whatnot. And like it's worth noting that it disintegrated or like evaporated any of the enemies, like they just burn to death. So the heat that the splash damage had was just to set people on fire. It wasn't even like proper incineration or
Nightmare,
decimation.
your mic messed up a little bit. Leave and rejoin.
What? Damn.
So basically, he was saying they don't get instantly incinerated.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
That you just said they just don't get instantly incinerated.
Yeah, something like that. So basically, when we get further into God of War 2, in the same novel, it confirms that when he goes to the Phoenix's chamber, he says, folding his wings, he ran deeper into the palace, alert for alert for traps and guards. There's no need for either. He came to a vast cavern filled with glowing from the heart of the world. The heat tore his face and chest, but he saw in it another chance to use the wings of Icarus. He stepped off the floor, extended the pinions, and banked quickly, making his way across the fiery floor, avoiding occasionally bubbling geysers of molten rock to finally land on the platform on the far side. Keep in mind, he's avoiding molten rock bubbling out of the magma. Pretty deep, pretty reasonable indication that he doesn't want to get hit by it. And it says ahead of him billowed even more intense heat radiation from the magma from which he had flown. To enter this chamber unprotected would mean instant death. Okay, so
Turn a phrase.
there's nothing metaphorical about that. Convinced if he touches it, he's going to die. And if you think the Phoenix is a good example of this, unfortunately, this is probably going to kill some people on the inside. Unfortunately, we do have a direct statement from. I can find it in here as well.
I was gonna say because I'm seeing that footage is not here. That's God of War 2, right?
Here we go. Here we go. I have it right here. Let me copy it. I will send it to you.
Oh, well, hang on. I already found the Phoenix image. So if you want to start talking about it.
So it says this is from the God of War 2 guidebook. Basically from Eric San Juan.
Oh, wait, this is the Pegasus. Which one's the Phoenix?
No, here, let me just fucking copy it. Don't do anything. I'll just send it to you. You're incapable.
It's not my fault you have all this shit thrown around everywhere. Get off my fucking...
It's an admin voice chat. So he basically says, I wanted the whole thing to be in flames with a skeleton of birds showing, though. That idea would eventually have Kratos burning to a crisp if he were sitting on it. The ferocious firebird with its wings on fire would be the final solution. So this indicates that it needed to be... He wanted it to be the flames of a skeleton, but if he didn't put fur on it, Kratos would have been incinerated. Like, so... Keep in mind, the Phoenix in the novel doesn't have a statement for like how hot it is. I know it comes out of the magma, but from what we can infer from this, we can infer that the fur gives massive heat protection, which is to be expected because the Phoenix is a bird of fire. But the actual heat that the Phoenix produces is inside of its body. And the actual like fur that exists around its body doesn't inherently burn you to death. Based on the statement. And what's furthermore the case is that we just have consistency. Like he's convinced that magma, molten rock, and molten fire will all kill him.
Do birds have fur?
No, they have feathers.
Okay, I was gonna say I don't think birds have fur.
Well, but you know what I'm trying to say? Like the leather, basically coating on his body.
No, I get it, but I was just thinking to myself for the last like 2 minutes, like, do birds have fur? And I'm trying to think like the bird's body and shit.
Tim, have you never seen Big Bird on Sesame Street and thought, what a nice shiny coat of fur you have?
You know what? Fuck you guys.
That's payback, motherfucker.
Okay, so the next one is just like. Also, I'd like to point out that do not take away from this to mean that it takes magma to kill him. Magma will kill him instantly. So there's no reason to assume that it would take something of that capacity. It would actually be less than a volcano or lava or something. It would be significantly less than that. So really hot fire can apparently just burn him as well.
Now, in fairness, most of these are in reference just to the non-god Kratos, right? They're not all like...
This is in-game God of War 2 Kratos, and unfortunately, So here,
Yeah, I love
here's
how you
the
both want to say something.
so
Well,
you want to tell him, Kyle, or you?
well, I don't know if we've got the same point, but I just remember a level in Ghost of Sparta where you basically have to run away from like some of the chambers that are about to be engulfed in lava after you get Farah's Bane.
So when you basically go under Atlantis, you make contact with the Titan Thera, and anytime you make contact with the lava on the ground, it does kill you instantly. Now you could argue that's like a gameplay mechanic, but like the problem is that
How
later on,
embarrassing.
when he's going through the levels, he meets King Midas, and he goes out of his way as the god of war to throw him into the lava pits to create like
Oh, I
what will.
remember that one actually.
Yes, he goes out of his way to do this. Um, and I mean, if you think that's like absurd, that it's like, oh, he can't survive lava. He also can be electrocuted by the lightning and the water caused by Poseidon. Even if that's being caused by Poseidon, he's still being killed by electricity being conducted through water.
Well, actually, it's funny you bring up King Midas. Let's talk about King Midas.
No, Kyle, please.
We'll talk about a little
Don't
later.
do him like that.
It's a little. Well, actually, wait. I don't have it in here. I guess we'll talk about it now. So Kratos can die instantly if he's transformed into gold. Like
It's a
like
simple touch. It's not like slow. It's instantaneous.
yeah.
It's
If
called the
Zim
Midas
looks
touch for a
through
reason.
the Ghost of War, like the Ghost of Sparta
Alright, let me look it up.
scans, I should have it in there.
It
I
is there.
know
He
I
says
posted it.
King Midas touches Kratos, he'll die by turning to gold, and he also can't physically open chests that King Midas has touched. There's also scans from the I haven't put them in there, but there are direct statements in
Oh
God of War.
wow, that is instant.
Yeah, there's also direct statements in God of War
Kind of looks
Ghost
like
of
Eddie.
Space guidebook that also confirms that he will die instantly if Midas touches him, and that it is impossible to physically lift the chest that Midas has touched. So he can't break an actual gold either, as the god of war.
I should have footage of that too, actually.
Which one?
Yeah, you
Uh,
put it down. I'm just saying the additional scenes with the guidebook I haven't posted in there just yet. I figured it wasn't really necessary at the point. I think we kind of got the point
Oh, here's
through.
Kratos being petrified again.
This horse is dead, as they say. Um, then lack of resistance to conceptual manipulation. So I covered this a little in the previous video, but no, the gods are not conceptual beings. Something can have conceptual manipulation and not be in and of itself conceptual. They do participate in everything in the reality that they inhabit and can be affected by most things that they inhabit, as by the fact that even God of War Kratos can be affected by most things on the earth and could be killed by conventional lava. Like he very clearly like limited and bound by the reality in which he occupies, and that's without mentioning all the other resistances I just mentioned and the ones that we're about to get into. There are so many limitations on what they exist as that would disqualify them for having conceptual manipulation, but also just like him resisting it is completely bogus. The only time conceptual manipulation is mentioned in any capacity is like God of War 3, but even then, it's not as high as everyone puts it at, which they claim 5-1. No evidence for that either.
I just want to clarify as well. We've been here for an hour already,
Oh yeah.
so it's gonna be another
So-
2-hour rant. It seems.
so, what about poison?
So that's the next one. Kratos actually gets affected by 3 different types of poison in Ascension alone.
And venom.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
Yes,
um,
then there is a difference, and I'll explain it to you off stream.
oh,
so
fuck
he can be
off.
affected. He can be affected by the Impuse's poison, which can slowly drain his health. He can be affected by the I guess this weird like
I think that's a manticore.
the second one.
Yeah, I think that's a manticore. Hang on, let me check.
Yeah, probably. Basically, you can like stun him.
Hey, it is.
Yeah, this second one, which he also gets affected by, can also more or less does the same thing, sticks into the spot. Then we also have feeds from God of War 1's novel that
Oh,
also
you
show that
say
he's
feeds, but
affected.
you just mean like examples.
Examples, my bad. Um,
No feeds here. That's for sure.
I wish. Let's see. So he's crawling through Pandora's temple. He says, "By the gods, no." The words escaped his lips when he saw the bulge of stone ahead begin to swell and take shape. The stone exploded outwards as a man-sized, scorpion-tailed creature flowed from the very rock to block his way. Drawing the blaze of chaos required stability he did not have. He jumped, caught at new hand and footholds, and grabbed for the scorpion thing. Its tail whipped about, but Kratos had a firm grip on its throat and turned its body so that its deadly tail flicked past him harmlessly. He grunted, focusing all his strength on crushing the monster's armored windpipe. Chitlin cracked. The scorpion thing now thrashed about wildly, its tail even more menacing now. Kratos jerked away as the tail sang through the air, aiming for his eyes. A droplet of poison that had beamed on the tip of the stinger splashed his forehead and burned like fire. His grip on the creature weakened as the poison trickled in his eyebrows, seething the hair and threatening to run into his eye. He swiped his arm against the poison drop to prevent it from blinding him, but his arm was coated in gore. Blood got into his eye and turned him blind. As he experienced in battle, the blood dropped a Stygian dark veil across his vision. He blinked furiously to clear it. Blood in his eye was better than permanently blinding poison, but the distinction quickly vanished when he heard talons scraping on the rock beneath him. Okay, so it does explain later on that his vision does turn crystalline. Later on, when he does have to use some, he does technically have to use some rage and some anger and power to like clear his vision, but he is affected for the moment by poison, and it can blind him temporarily. He's completely and totally affected by it. Again, having the ability to nullify something doesn't give you resistance. That just means like after the fact you have a way to deal with it if it hits you. And that's just one example. I have another one as well. Also comes from the God of War 1 novel. Keep in mind, again, the average listener who's just like interested in God of War, you may not have made these claims, so you might not be affected by this really. But like, if you've made a bunch of these claims about him being resistant to these things, again, like it depends on how you define a resistance. If you define a resistance to be not dying to something, then I guess everybody's resistant to everything. Because Kratos,
Also, I will
yeah.
point out as well, these are mainly in reference to a non-God of War Kratos, although I don't know if this like scales towards God.
As we've shown, the God of War Kratos does not have resistance to like his soul getting ripped out. He does
Yeah.
not have resistance to like being frozen or being like turned to gold or being like melted by magma or being electrocuted to death. So I don't think it really makes a difference at this point because like if you can be affected by all those things and you have no feats of resisting poison while the God of War, why would I assume that it would matter that you're the God of War?
I'm just saying for the record that to be fair, a lot of these examples are a pre God of War Kratos.
They are, but it doesn't make that much of a difference. Like the only ones that would matter for sure are the ones that affect like biology as far as like his ability to like eat. Um, where is it? Oh yes, the Hydra. So after he kills the Hydra, he says the endless neck and giant head destroyed and slid down into the Aegean's dark waters, which now churned and boiled even more as ferocious sharks circled below. Got to taste the Hydra's blood. The last Kratos saw, sharks were darting like crows into Hydra's mouth, ripping gory chunks from its flapping tongue. To them, it mattered not if the flesh they dined on was human or monster. Ravenously, they tore the Hydra's flesh, dragging it below the roll surface. Yet even that immense head was not enough for the sharks. 100,000 circled endlessly, thrashing the sea with their tails as they hope for a happy meal. Chris would be happy to provide that for his unwitting eyes. At his feet, the blood tingled the water that ran to his leg, hooking a shark or two in the barbs. The blades of chaos would steal enough light to close his minor cuts. He seized the railing and pulled himself up on the shattered deck. When he threw the blades, the circling sharks sped away. They discovered a feast of their own, literally. Everywhere he looked, sharks floated, their black eyes fixed and stared. Some were beginning to bloat, and others had their entrails blown out. Even the sharks that swarmed these dead sharks to strike their poisoned flesh were soon showing their own bellies to the sky. Eating a hydra was just as fatal as being eaten by one. So, the reason why this is a feat for like Kratos specifically is that this is all Kratos' dialogue, like his like mental dialogue. So this is what he believes, even if like everything that I've shown you is what he believes and what he's observing. So we don't have any indication of like how deadly this poison is, other than that it just kills you. Like we don't know what makes it deadly per se. Kratos convinces that it's deadly, and it's just like okay, yeah, it can like affect you to some degree. And then I think I have one final example as well from the God of War 1 novel. Yes.
I'm gonna be honest. We can just skip it. Like I think it's clear we have enough evidence for the lack of acid and like poison resistance and venom
Yeah,
resistance. I guess
so
to fucking help.
then I just lack resistance to acid manipulation. No feats of resist acid manipulation have been shown. He has an inability to interact with shadows as well, and this is just shown from like the abilities of the head of Helios, where he literally needs like a specific ability to pull the siren seductresses out of the shadows, revealing them and making them vulnerable. Um, that'll play into what I'm going to talk about in the Dante matchup once we get
Yeah,
down to that.
I'll say you mean the third video?
We can get into it here. It only takes 10 minutes to talk about Dante.
All right.
Also, lack of extensive healing factors. That's a huge one. So most of the gods, the two ones I'm showing here are Helios and Hermes. Most of them die to either decapitation, dismemberment, or like impalement.
Oh, okay. So that one's not working. Is that okay? So for some reason these two aren't working. But yeah, you can just look up the death scenes. It's not hard to find these.
Yeah, it's not far that like you can literally, even if you want to say they got like weaker over time, though nothing indicates that they would have survived this at full health. Um, he gets killed by getting his head ripped off. So already their healing factor is way below the mid category because they cannot survive lethal blows. If you can't survive your leg being cut off, you don't even have low mid healing.
Well, we even have Hera who just dies from a broken neck.
Yeah. Um, then I did mention kind of at the bottom also that like the way Kratos dies is that he dies from getting impaled twice. And for the second example, I understand like yeah he gets killed by the blades of chaos after he's like wounded and whatnot. In the case of Ares, while Ares does hit him with the pillar and a spear, and you could say he has like higher AP than him, like that's fine. What kills Kratos is not the spear itself; it's the fact that it's embedded in his stomach and he bleeds to death.
Yes.
He's able to retain the will to live after being impaled and it going through all of his organs. So destroying his anatomy is a completely fair way to kill him. Then I just mentioned that he has like an ability to fly, inability to interact with demonic power, inability to harm Dante and Devil Trigger, and Power Creep. And I'm going to explain several of those as well. Inability to engage in magic. I kind of already mentioned this before with the magic shields, but there is another example that I mentioned that I'm gonna kind of touch up on this little myth I've been hearing, where people have been telling me that the blades of chaos have conceptual manipulation. Not only is because they're formed from like they have the force of chaos from the primordial realm. No information is given to this outside of the one conversation that Athena has, where she explains that it's from the primordial realm. Doesn't explain or give any details about it or how any of its powers work. And we have actual feats of how the Blades of Chaos interacts with certain objects in the series. And let me be clear here: if it had any conceptual manipulation at all, Kratos is not capable of using it because the average attack from the Blades of Chaos is not even capable of breaking basic magic spells. So when he's in the Grave of Ships, as I listed here, um, he's basically. I'm sure you guys are aware at the beginning of God of War 1 when Kratos is trying to break into the boat captain's private quarters. He is actually unable to get into the private quarters because he needs the door. The door is locked due to a key. See, in the actual story, that is true, but there's an alibi given for why he couldn't just do it otherwise. You know, because Kratos in character would always just break down the door, and that's what he tries to do. It says the pair of doors near the end of the companionway were different from the ones the other, massively timbered and bound with black iron. They looked strong enough that even Kratos might have trouble breaking them down. And as he considered this, the blade chains began to warm, sparking with non unpleasant stings. He drew one blade and pushed it against the door before him. A brilliant shower of energy splashed over the door, and the blade never reached the timbers. The energy flickered longest around the deep lock in the timber, a lock, a magical lock. Kratos nodded to himself. So, a pair of doors not only strong enough as a fortress, but sealed with magical bindings and mystical locks, and who knew what else? What sort of treasures might a slave captain keep within a vault? So, um, keep in mind, is never elaborated on in any capacity, like what properties make up this lock other than it being magical, and it's built by like a basic slave captain who, as far as we understand, has no understanding of like deeper levels of like.
I mean, the
And
man literally made a lock that could keep out the blades of chaos. I think we might be sleeping a little bit on the slave
So
captain.
here's the problem is that you're using the blades of chaos as the standard. The blades of chaos have consistent feats of not breaking through magic items.
Fake news.
And if you think this is bad, if you think I'm like lying, he comes back to the cabin with the key. He says there is another room also magically barred, lacking even a keyhole. The captain had kept concubines in his own cabin. What treasure would he have? Would he have found precious for him to lock away even from himself? Kratos had little patience for idle. The best way to discover the contents was to break down the door and enter. He pressed the door to the cabin. He would not allow himself to look at it. He stopped before the magical portal and began to examine it for obvious rays. Finding no handle, he simply tried to shove the door open. Cordial muscle bunched in his massive shoulders, but he could not make the door so much as rattle. With a snarl, he lost what little patience he had. He drew the blades of chaos and hacked at the door. Golden force flared, and the blades did not even touch the wood. Fury rose within him, and outward from his bones surged the raid of Poseidon. Power made him feel invincible, and the lightning of his fury pushed the golden force away, and the door simply opened in simple amazement. So, basically, it establishes that both the blades of chaos and his physical strength are not capable of breaking it open.
But the Fury of Poseidon is.
Yes, because this is a magic-based thing. Like what we can infer from this is that one magic item can cancel out some other magic items.
well, let me just say as well. If you think that this is like a one-time thing in one's novel, World War III has an instance where Helios is protected by a battalion of magic shield wielders, and if you try and use anything but the Nemean Cestus,
Or the
it's,
Cyclops, who has to like break the ground around them to knock them out from beneath.
yeah, well, if you just don't have either of those things available, all other weapons just bounce off.
Yeah, they're not. And then I also provided for like the third time the example of the Legionnaire scans. And then this is the rest of this is just final claim stuff about the pantheons being like not separated by like space and time. I kind of already mentioned a lot of this, but now I can sort of jump into the DMC debate scans to explain, I guess.
Do you need me to go over there to show anything, or since this is a DMC primarily focused channel, like?
I'll still sort of explain it. So like, obviously for the purpose of the debate, I made the claim that Dante was at like 2C AP scaling based on his Spartan scaling to Spartan outcome,
Yeah.
and at bare minimum he had like an accessible speed based on like consistent feats of like being able to fight characters who can move in reverse time, stop time, move across different universes in the multiverse, travel across time space fabrics, jump through space and time, across dimensions with raw speed. And then there were some immeasurable arguments that I could use via the moving objects backwards in time through the Devil Crests. Though we also have statements from Pluto as well, whom he fights 3 years after the events of DMC3, who is stated to travel and bypass the dimensional axis of the time stream,
Yeah,
giving
like.
the illusion of raw speed.
So one of the funniest things is like I think it was like 2 weeks before the actual debate happened, we started getting Pinnacle of Combat scans, or maybe about like
Out
three.
the ass, I might add.
And They are some of the most disgustingly blatant scans I've ever seen.
Actually, let me
Now
let me.
let me now let me play devil's advocate. But it's a mobile game. Doesn't that mean it's not canon?
It is
Yeah.
officially overseen by Capcom, and it is actually apparently confirmed as canon by its own description on the Japanese website that it's, or I guess on the Japanese app
It
store it's
also
on.
takes place between DMC1 and DMC3, which is an area that currently in the current timeline is not occupied by anything. As
Yeah,
DMC
there's a perfect
novel,
amount of time. Well, in between 3 and 1, was it at like 8 years?
Cries in DMC1's novel.
well, not 3 or 9 to be more accurate. So we actually have we actually have a chat, which Zim, you can feel free to chill in this. The baby proof scans chat. So I'll explain this for people on the channel as well as for anyone who has like disagreements with my scaling or anyone who's like curious of what I mean when I say baby proof scans. So in DMC tends to give nuanced explanations about how stuff in its lore and scaling work. When you are being unreasonable or you are being like silly, fallacious, or you're not understanding the context of what I'm saying, or you don't think I have provided enough information, I provide you an opportunity to be reasonable and accept what I have to say before I provide you with a baby proof scan. If I provide you with a baby proof scan, by extension, I am babying you. Like, I am giving you a statement that is so blatantly obvious, you have to lie to me to ignore it. So, an example of this would be um, in Visions of V, there is a direct statement from it's basically like a statement of Nightmare, right? When a Nightmare is made for the first time, that as soon as Mundus makes him, it says its power is so great it would lay waste to even the demon world, so he had to seal its power. Um, I have been told that that statement doesn't mean destroy. So like people have played a semantical game with me that it can mean like different words. Pinnacle of Combat decided to release a different statement, or a similar statement about it.
Oh yeah, here,
I
let me.
keep in mind, in this statement, Mundus also says that he feared its power because it would destroy it. This is the statement. It says, the underworld. The Demon King is said to have created a powerful weapon that he feared would destroy his own kingdom, and he sealed this power to stop it. Doesn't mention Nightmare or Mundus, but this is a literal, blatant repetition of what I just said. With his immense great power, he could effortlessly lift the entire structure of the demon world, or the underworld, or destroy it. Only a being comparable to his power could surpass its strength. A weapon would be would be a nightmare for any entity living or dead. So keep in mind, it not only reiterated the statement, it pointed out that it is effortless to destroy it now, and he can also bench press it. Like, I didn't need that. I already had the evidence to do this, and this is without mentioning that, like, this statement, the statement from Visions of E, is a repetition of an original statement from a DMC1 guidebook that confirms Dante, through observations of Nightmare in a sealed state, can infer that he can blow up the demon world. So Visions of E isn't even the original source where that came from. That was just reiterated in a more recent one. And then Pinnacle of Combat just made a more blatant statement. Also says only a being comparable to his power could surpass his strength. And it's a nightmare for any entity, whether it's alive or dead. So, again, other like examples of information that could be used there. So, if you think like I have only one of these, there is at least 7 or 8. Well, actually, I think there's like 10. Well, fuck, I have like 13 in here. Never mind. Yeah. So there's examples for all these for existence erasure, immeasurable speed, inaccessible speed, conceptual manipulation, and abstract existence type 1. There are so many blatant scans here. The point I was just trying to make throughout I had been trying to make a lot of points throughout this debate, but one of the ones I really wanted to touch up on is like for the inaccessible speed thing. If anyone has any doubts about that, keep in mind like no matter what wiki that you subscribe to, whether you use Versus Battle Wiki, Omniversal Battle Wiki, or Character Stats Profile Wiki, you probably subscribe to one of them. It doesn't matter what you believe, whether you need to move in stop time, like no time, you need to move like in this specific way to get an accessible speed. Dante qualifies for all of your arguments no matter what. He literally performs all of your feats or any of the feats that you would use for a character for inaccessible speed. He just does them more consistently. Um, and then like as far as well, I mean, if you guys want to, we can just get into the hacks and resistances now, like how the fight would go down.
Mangler, we are at 1 hour and 29 minutes. Do you really think that's necessary?
Right. Well, I mean, like I've kind of already explained the AP speed scaling. So,
Keep in mind, we're trying not to waste our audience's time either.
I understand. Okay.
Look,
So
we're just having a 2-hour rant. What's wrong with that?
I mean, according to that guy, all we can do is whine and complain. I mean, to be fair, I have done a little bit of whining, but this mostly within reason. At least I completely think it's fine to say. So, understand that when you put Dante in a fight with Kratos, giving the pre-retcon statements, Kratos at best has like multi-uni AP, high 3A if you completely ignore fucking context, and infinite speed. To put it in perspective, well, actually not most lesser demons, all lesser demons in the series that are not physically handicapped can travel to the human world with lost speed. What the hell am I hearing?
Kyle
What is
apparently doing something in the background that I don't want to know about.
right when I'm trying to explain a point. Yeah, well, lovely. Okay. So they have direct statements that they can appear anywhere at any time by Arkham. They can appear in the human world, like across dimensional boundaries, rather easily. They can move in stop time, reverse time. They can move in basically any context across any distance that they need to. And these are most lesser demons in the series. Dante fights people that are way stronger than this, even in DMC 3. So understand that, like, if Kratos went to the demon world in DMC, because this is where most of their speed feats would apply, they would speed the lesser demons of DMC would speed blitz not only him but his entire Greek pantheon into the fucking oblivion. He would get killed by Helcanas and Pusas and Misiras, like the weakest lesser demons that we have in the series. That's without mentioning like their abstract existence and the fact that he wouldn't even be capable of killing them, and even if they did, they would just respawn in the demon world. So, actually, wait. Do we want to explain the abstract existence? Because I guess now that we kind of have to go into Dante's hacks, we kind of have to mention.
Okay, I'm gonna ask how relevant do you actually think it is?
It is kind of relevant to explaining like misconceptions about like Dante's powers as well.
We can do that. We can do that in a separate video. Like we're mainly here talking about why Kratos fails here, or like why this doesn't work with Kratos.
Sure. So basically, I'll just explain power creep then. Okay.
That's fine.
So I wanted to do this during the debate as well as like in this video per se. I was going to do it regardless of what the outcome was. So Kratos in this scenario in this matchup suffers from this phenomenon known as power creep. Anyone who has played Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic the Gathering or any kind of card game, even several video games, you're probably familiar with this concept, right? It's basically when something or a mechanism or a character or something does one specific function, and then something else comes along and does that function but does it better. So this is what Dante effectively does to most of Kratos' abilities. So like he either power creeps them directly, nullifies their utility in its entirety, or is just like objectively capable of producing like better powers and abilities overall. So in going back to his resistances, I mentioned how he doesn't have any resistance to ice. Okay, so Cerberus is not only cold enough to also freeze you solid immediately, so it would be completely effective on Kratos, and Dante could just crush him or obliterate him in the time that he's frozen. Keep in mind, for this matchup to happen, we would need to equalize Kratos' speed and AP for him to even be able to fight Dante. So it's not the other way around. Like Kratos has to be given a massive handicap for him to walk into the room and not get like blinked out of existence. Even if he does, Cerberus can already freeze him. Cerberus is also a part of the same tribe as King Cerberus, who's stated to be capable of freezing you to your very soul. think that's also an exaggeration. The actual weapon description in game, as far as the weapon masters, confirms that it is ice that is cold to the core, and core of a demon's like existence in this case would also be its soul.
I mean, we wouldn't even need to go that far. After seeing that bridge scene where Kratos can immediately just be frozen by like the wind, there's no doubt in
Well,
my mind that that Cerberus
there's
would
also
fucking
the
freeze him.
fact that it's also like a specific demon from the Cerberus tribe that was sealed in Temnagru and would scale higher than lesser demons that were created by Mundus, such as the Frosts. Even the Frosts can already freeze you far beyond the temperatures of absolute zero. In fact, according to the descriptions, you can stand next to them and you will die slowly. You will literally like slowly just be killed by the temperature of their talons. Like just the air around them is that cold. So Kratos just being in contact with any of the ice off of Cerberus would kill him instantly. And he confirms that like Typhoon blowing on him would kill him instantly. So I think it's completely fair for an ice that we can quantify that has better feats and abilities that yeah, that would be an instant win con. It would either freeze him and then he'd be shattered immediately, or or he would die instantly on contact. Um, as well as well, moving down to like soul extraction, Dante does have the ability to like separate portions of people's like humanity and whatnot with like rebellion, humanity from devil arms, demons, and you may wonder
Yeah.
like that's not applicable in the context of gods. Well, his rebellion can also like attack your soul directly. In fact, in DMC1, they can check the DMC1 scans if they'd like to see this. Cool to see Balrog over here. All of his attacks are soul based. All of his devil arms are literally soul powered, and devil arms themselves are also literally made from the soul of a demon, aka according to Pinnacle of Combat, the what is it? The what does it say
We
exactly?
have
So I don't want to mistake in this. The
right here.
the concept of their existence. Hmm.
Yeah. Look, I think at this point we've shown enough. They're like I'm not gonna scroll through all these fucking chats looking for one specific
Sure,
thing.
sure, sure. It's also stated by Mathieu to be the pure embodiment of their of a demon.
I
So
assure you, we have receipts for whatever we're saying.
yeah, so being able to like he would be able to attack his soul directly. This is also without mentioning that like this is full Arsenal DMC3 Dante that they gave me, so he has access to Yamato, which we know can do the same thing. Um,
So, also, as far as I'm aware, we haven't even gone over, like the demonic miasma that exists within the demon world,
Nope.
we
and that
haven't gone
like
over. Well, actually, we'll go over it now. So lack of resistance to corruption and stamina. We're going back to this. Would you like to know
and
how many?
madness.
Oh yeah. So would you like to know how many different types of side effects like the demon world can cause to you? Um, over a dozen actually. So you can be driven insane just by making contact with it. You can slowly. The most common ones are that you slowly lose your mind and you suffer stamina drainage, stamina lossage. You just lose tons of your stamina. You get weak really quickly just by being near demonic energy. So that's just if it's in the environment coded around you. Being like being touched by raw demonic energy, so like a charge shot or Dante's bullets, which are also created through demonic energy, you're immediately going to start getting corrupted or you're going to start having stamina lossage. And Kratos, as we've established, can lose stamina just by touching a magic shield. So, in what reality is he going to survive the status effects of a force like demonic power, which, again, used by demons to self actualize their powers, adapts to whatever their desires is? So, it's a property that literally changes itself from moment to moment to moment to become something else based on what that person wants them to be, as opposed to a generic magic shield that has no specific properties.
Well, also to add on to something with the madness manipulation, Kratos is so susceptible to this. We'll take the example from the DMC1 novel. During the nightclub incident, they were literally ripping their own eyes out and pretty much eating them.
So to provide context to what Kyle says, um, typically when a demon tries to possess a human, it has to be a lesser demon in DMC because demons that are stronger than lesser demons, like greater demons or especially demon kings, if they try to possess a human vessel, what happens is that their power is so strong they basically set their souls on fire, cause them to be driven insane, and then they start ripping their own eyeballs out and eating them. And this demon is not able to possess the person because the sheer amount of power drives them mad and insane. Like the demonic energy just drives them crazy. So it has to jump from body to body to body, which is causing all these people to spontaneously commit suicide because they literally cannot fathom what they're touching. Like what
Also, as well, if people want to say like Kratos could just do like some sort of grotesque things to Dante, cool. Let Dante bleed on him. Demonic blood is poisonous.
Oh yeah, yeah. So also demonic blood is stated by Gilbert to be poisonous to like his kind. So like if he
Well,
stabs Dante in Devil Trigger, Dante will literally like poison him. And as we've established, he could be poisoned by multiple different types of poisons in his own verse that don't have specific properties. Of
well,
course,
it's not
he's
just
getting poisoned
Gilva.
by demonic energy.
It's not just Gilva. It's like the little monkey thing in the hospital when Dante stabs him as well. Says that his blood is poisonous.
Well, I just meant like Gilver is the most like direct example. You could give multiple examples there. Also, like the demon world, why I mentioned the demon world with demonic powers that the demon world is stated by Dante in Two's novel to be underpinned in its geography by magical energy or demonic energy, if you want to use them interchangeably. So any any status condition that you can apply to demonic power or the demon world applies to anyone who's using it, and this would include Dante as well, which is why we're including all the effects of the demon world under his demonic power. So the ability to turn the air to acid and the soil like to rust, like he can do that just by like either intentionally or unintentionally. It's also worth noting that anytime like well, I guess I can go into that a little later. As far
We're
as
at
like
1 hour and 42 minutes.
good, we're gonna keep going. So, madness, manipulations, and illusions. We already discussed like all the ways that Kratos is affected by those, all of the ways that demonic power can cause those to happen just by making contact with him. So, lack of resistance to existence erasure. So, Dante can already like we already have feats of him being capable of performing existence erasure based on his interactions with demons. So, demons, when they are turned into a devil arm, are literally having their soul, what is effectively the concept of their existence, being transformed into a weapon. Dante can not only destroy these things, he can force you to submit to these positions. It's also referred to as the pure embodiment. So he can effectively transform your existence into a weapon. Now he is doing this to demons, yes, but the point is that he can interact with the properties of a being's existence directly.
And keep in mind that these
So
beings' existence would just be concepts.
yeah,
Well,
they,
also as
they
well, if we take the example from the fight with Balrog in Five's novel, these devil arms that willingly give up their forms, if they wanted to, they could come back and fight Dante at any other point.
Yeah, they do have to have like a strong will or something to retain it as well, but it's the main point is that like these souls that form their existence are formed from their names and the powers of their names, which form the mold of the demon itself. The idea of that predates the existence of the demon world, which already predates the human world, which is reality as we know it in DMC. So the concept of their existence predates creation, which predates creation. So they are not subject to any reality that the human world participates in. This is why when the demons show up in DMC, for example, like when you see them in the human world, the only reason they're affected by humans is because they're not bringing their true forms and bodies over. They're only bringing their minds and they're possessing mediums made of materials in the human world. We actually have direct statements from Pinnacle of Combat now that it is impossible to kill a demon unless you have materials from the demon world.
Well, you've also got the stuff from 1's novel and 5's novel, but that's neither here or there. Don't you remember the soldiers at the start of 5? They killed the Impusers with guns.
Oh
Remember
yeah,
that?
I forgot about that. They totally killed them, and the bullets didn't reflect off of their bodies completely.
Remember that one Impuser fell down.
Oh yeah.
He
None of
died.
the other ones. Like people just honestly take that as a serious argument against them. It's just like, oh, a couple more bullets and they would have killed him. Yeah, and none of the other Impuzes were affected, so I could just argue that one was being a dipshit.
Also to add extra context, the novels don't just go out of the way to say that no bullet will like work on him. It goes out of its way to say no human weapon. So
Nero, so
just let me know this like right now. Wank this as you want. That pretty much means stuff like hydrogen bombs and atom bombs are out of the question as well.
well,
But can they be Yujiro Hanma?
So Five's novel states this, but people forget like this is also stated in Four's novel, both in the first version of the Deadly Fortune translation and the second one, which we also got after the debate. Both Nero and Lady both confirm that regular weapons just don't work on demons. And keep in mind, neither one of them at this point, has seen a demon in their true form. They're talking about the demons that have possessed the mediums in the human world. And they are convinced normal weapons cannot kill them.
Wait, hang on. When does Nero say that? Because I was gonna say, doesn't Nero fight? He fights Burial's true form.
No. So this is in the Midist Forest, 1 month before the events of DMC4.
Oh, okay.
He's basically tinkering around with Blue Rose, and he says regular weapons do not work against demons.
Yeah, alright,
This
that's
is
fine.
actually the reason he modifies the Blue Rose specifically to fire in its iteration, because he cannot kill them with normal weapons.
Also, Mangler's read the second version more recently than I have, but would this be from the Scarecrows? Or would this be another type of demon?
These are from the Scarecrows.
Yeah, you know those little things that are made up of demonic parasites, not even like actual lesser demons.
No, they're well, no. So those are the chimeras that you're thinking of, but the Scarecrows are like some of the weakest lesser demons.
No. The scarecrows are made up of tiny demonic
beetles, I think.
like parasites.
Well, yeah, they are. They're like Tricolopolis or something. Like there's a specific name given for it. It's like
Tricolopolis, if I recall correctly, the thing in DMC2 that creates the City of Evil.
No, so there's like a specific. It's hard to pronounce.
Look, they're just demonic insects inside of like a rucksack.
Yeah, sure. Basically, the point is that we have consistent sources from this that confirm that they're only able to kill them this specific way. What makes this worse is that like Nero's Red Queen is also made from materials that the Cavaliers' armor is made from, and their spears, which are literally made from demon and human souls. So, and they're also, a lot of them are also upgraded through the ascension, like magical ascension or upgrades, by Agnes.
Allegedly.
You have the guy that create artificial hellgates, and he literally makes man-made devil arms. So, if anyone wants to tell me that like Nero's killing demons, like these like ladies killing demons, ladies also stated to have anti-demon bullets specifically, and has weapons in the Pinnacle of Combat game that specifically uses energy and weapons from the demon world. She literally has a flamethrower that uses hellfire to burn demons into nothingness.
Yeah, here I can show that one real quickly.
If you guys like think I'm just like pulling stuff out of my ass, there is literally so many statements of like you being unable to kill demons.
Hey Zoom, do you remember when Mangler said it would only take 10 minutes?
Yeah. It's been about
that was for the Dante. That was for the Dante AP and speed section, and I kept my word about that. At this portion. So basically, the reason why this matters is that if Dante goes into Devil Trigger, where he becomes a full demon, Kratos cannot kill him. Kratos has lost any win conditions. He is unable to kill Dante anymore.
But what about the blade? Okay, so first of all, we're talking Ascension Kratos, technically, like in the context of Ascension Kratos.
I mean, it wouldn't matter.
Like, let's be fair. Everything we've said is for DMC3 Dante. brought up nothing. That's more like
Yeah, no,
eyes and above.
all of this scales to DMC3 Dante. We are not even going into the later version.
Yeah, so
And all of these arguments work against later versions of Kratos in the Greek pantheon. Every single one. And yes, that includes Hope Kratos. If you think him having hope changes anything, I'm about to destroy your hope.
But
on to the
Mangler,
fun.
but Mangler, it's a young archetype. It's a concept.
Oh yeah.
Concept of
So,
sucking these nuts.
Lack of resistance to BFR. So Dante can BFR you multiple ways. So Jackbot and his sealing capabilities can already can BFR you. Dante can break out of dimensions in DMC3's novels, so he can also like destroy any BFR that Kratos creates. Not that Kratos would have that, but he can also stop that as well. And then
I'll tell you fair, if he gives the Blade of Olympus, he can't technically BFR into Tartarus.
I mean,
Why would he BFR him to Tartarus?
I'm just saying he technically could.
He would stick him in between the universes like he did the Mundus.
I said
There,
Kratos can do it.
There,
So-
Mundus, you have a friend. Go talk to him.
So this is without mentioning that he also has Yamato, which can not only seal off the demon world, which is a multiverse. It can seal off like various dimensions and people. It can rip power from heart. It can seal individual beings as well and hellgates. And it can also just open up portals, so he could literally just yoink and then kick Kratos inside the dimension and just leave him there. Kratos, by the way, doesn't have self-sustaining biology, so he could just send him to the demon world to a dimension and let him be killed by demons, or leave him to die and starve to death.
Look, bottom
really
line
wants
for
to.
bottom line for Yamato, it cuts through space, it gets rid of your enemies, it pays your taxes, it takes your wife out for dinner, it does everything you want it to.
It literally does everything you could ever want it to, and this is without mentioning that it would it would completely negate his durability as well. Like I don't know.
But can it explain why kids love the delicious taste of Cinnamon Toast Crunch?
I don't know. Hang on, I don't know about that one. So here's a fun one that I actually figured out when I was researching into debate. Lack of night vision. So this can actually be exploited by Dante. I don't know if you guys are aware, but Dante actually has like 4 different abilities with Doppelganger. He doesn't actually have just the ability to create clones. He actually has the ability to control shadows completely.
Yeah,
And
because that's
since
the official description for it. He has the ability to control shadows.
Yes, so since he absorbed the power of the doppelganger, he would have all of its abilities. And he also has technique mimicry, weapon mastery, and he has demonic power and desire, which equates to self-actualization. So he basically has multiple different ways to create whatever powers and abilities that he wants, and he absorbed the literal soul of the doppelganger.
Well, if that's not good enough for you, the doppelganger could just make its own small, like, shadow pocket dimension full of nothing, like full of darkness.
And then
Like
girls
it did in the
can't
boss
see
fight.
anything.
So basically,
Or actually, let me get to the final one. If you think that it's a little bit boring watching 2 Dantes wail on Kratos, okay, have a Kratos wail on another Kratos.
no, so Dante can basically do everything that the doppelganger can do. So he can create a clone of himself, which I would like to point out. These clones, unlike the clones summoned by the Stone of Orcos, can stay around a lot longer. They're also made of demonic energy, so just being near them would corrupt you to death. He can shit them out and then respawn them whenever he needs to, because they can just be deactivated, or deactivated, reactivated. He can activate them in base and in Devil Trigger, and he can make clones of Kratos as well as himself, and they're also invincible.
But tell us how
And
you
then-
really feel.
But let's be truly honest. If you think the win con against Doppelganger is, well, we'll just
Interact
use
with
some
shadows.
light attacks.
Yeah,
Well,
so
Doppelganger
doesn't
thought of
work.
that, and Doppelganger's like, no, fuck light. So I just have this giant like supernova attack that just blackens the entire area again.
Also, to be
In order
clear, oh god.
I was gonna say, in order for Dante to beat the doppelganger, what it took for him to do that was to fight him in a room with light switches that literally refracted every single portion of darkness out of the entire room until it was made purely of light. And even then, after it dispelled his powers, it could only dispel them temporarily for a moment until he could turn the entire room back on in shadows. And he could still be exposed to pure light. It would only break him for a minute. But once he got covered in his shadows, it didn't matter if you were hitting him with light specific weapons. I have footage of Dante attempting to do this like in gameplay. I know people say it's in gameplay so it doesn't count, but like there is literally a reason. But if that's true, then I guess it should also count that Dante can only hurt the doppelganger in the shadows with his own abilities. That's kind of convenient because Dante already has feats at this point of being able to damage shadows from DMC1's novel. He can hit incorporeal shadows, so he has shadow manipulation. Like he can interact with shadows directly, and he can't hurt the doppelganger.
Now let me add this right now. If people are about to say, but that's one's novel. Yes, well, thanks to the reshuffling of the timeline, one's novel technically comes before Three's manga.
It takes place about a year to a year and a half before, so yeah, all of that scales to one three's Dante as well. And yeah, but even Beowulf, light specific weapons and light in general does nothing to slow the doppelganger down. And it's keep in mind that's for the doppelganger individually. Dante is not a being made of shadow. So even if he shined a light, even if let's say like Kratos put on like a giant, let's say his lightning of Zeus that he's using from Ascension, right, wasn't actually that bright enough, even though what it's controlling is lightning, not light specifically. Dante could just respawn the doppelganger because the doppelganger is controlled via a dimensional light rift. So you have to prove that he could interact with a dimensional light rift, or that he would even know that there was a dimensional light rift going on. Like, how would you be able to detect that?
Would it also be like, could we also give him the ability to chuck the doppelganger back to the void like Virgil does?
Well, I mean, technically, but I was just gonna say that like Dante, since he controls the doppelganger, by the doppelganger boss description, he has the ability to refract light. So he wouldn't even need to BFR him to a dark room with Yamato or fight him in there. He could literally just open a dimensional light rift and refract all the light in the entire area away. And then Kratos will just be in a pitch black area. Dante will be able to see him, and Dante will be able to kill him. And Kratos will not be able to see anything that's going on. In fact, he could literally just have the doppelganger run circles around Kratos in the dark, and he would just be corrupted to death by demonic power. He wouldn't even have to fight him. He could just run a loop, continuously just run laps around his body, and that would be enough to kill him. I know that sounds stupid and ridiculous, but that literally could be a win con. Aside from him actually just choosing to damage him with one of many of his different abilities. Resistance to time manipulation. Dante is Quicksilver, and if you think this is just like the ability to like slow down time, which we know already works on him, he has the powers of Garion, so he has the ability not just to shoot that giant time wave. He can shoot tracking time bubbles, because yes, he would have all of Garion's abilities, as he also absorbed Garion's soul.
Let's actually add a little bit. Let's add a little bit of context here.
Please don't.
In God of War, the time manipulation is just simply slowing down on time. In Devil May Cry, it's literally a dimensional like wave.
Yeah, it's stated to be a dimensional time rift, so it's affecting the entire space that you're occupied in. And what's furthermore in the cutscene, it confirms, just like as we would expect, unlike in God of War, where the novel and the game openly establishes that the world literally becomes a green luminescent glow that everyone recognizes. In DMC, when you use time manipulation, that's not what happens. Only people who can sense demonic power can actually see the time wave.
Is that what the original kanji says?
Oh my god.
Well, we can actually infer this from the cutscene, because in gameplay, everything goes monochrome. In the cutscene, everything still has its color.
There's a static, and we just see it slowed down, so there's no indication at all.
And let's say this for certain, like, the only reason why things are actually slowing down in gameplay is because it's gameplay. If you take the cutscenes interaction with how Quicksilver works, time completely stops.
Well, so that's technically not true, but it doesn't matter because Garion's powers, both by Five's descriptions of ragtime, and yes, this applies to Garion, as the powers shown by the Elder Garion Knights are from an offspring of Garion. So they would actually be a second generation Garion, not a first generation Garion. It is the power to control space and space time as a whole. So all the powers that Elder Garion Knight would have would also be affected. And this also includes things like Slow World as well. So it would be capable of controlling time or space to any degree that he wanted and jumping through it, as well as stacking multiple layers of time manipulation and shooting time tracking bubbles. So Dante has so many different ways to time manipulation Kratos, much more so than Pollux and Castor were ever doing to him, although what they were doing was very affecting. Their arsenal just sucked, and they didn't have any opportunity to capitalize on any of the abilities. That's kind of another thing I wanted to mention is that most of these characters have shit arsenals in God of War. They're absolute garbage arsenals. They have terrible fighting styles. They have one good ability that just taxes Kratos into the oblivion. But because Kratos actually is like a way better fighter than them, and they're too stupid to use it properly, he usually ends up winning. Now we give him a fighter who has all of these different abilities and is not a complete idiot. Is actually just as intelligent as he is, and can copy and mimic any power ability that he has and master it completely.
Again,
Kratos
this
is way more outmatched than he ever could have hoped to be.
How do you really
again, for as much as this is a cop out, we're not even going over like Dante's like biggest advantage, and it's the demonic martial art known as like Royal Guard, which pretty much like fucks Kratos into the ground.
why do
There
you
would
encourage
never
him?
be a reason for him to use Royal Guard. There would never be a position for him to use that.
Don't encourage
Whatever.
him, please.
So the lack of resistance to field manipulation. I mentioned this because in DMC4's novel, it actually establishes that in the first translation, and this is also inferred in the second one, that when Nero fights Dante for the first time, when Dante stingers him with rebellion, his arm confirms that it feels a great sense of trepidation from his sword. Specifically, that his sword is causing the bringer to feel an immense amount of fear. It is like deathly afraid of Dante's rebellion. And Dante, as far as we know, has never demonstrated fear manipulation abilities in the series. But we do know that the demonic power can also cause you to like give into despair and fear as well. We could just argue it could cause that, but this would also mean that the rebellion and its energy as a whole, when it makes contact with you, can cause you to feel fear.
Now let's add something extra there. Well, that could be a one-off thing. That would be if it wasn't for the fact that Beryl in 2's novel felt that exact same fear when she was about to enter the room that Mundus was occupying.
She was feeling that the entire time she was in the alternate timeline, just being near any energy at all
Oh
associated
yeah,
with Mundus was causing her to shit herself.
extra context: the timeline where Mundus won and took over the human world, so it's just flooded with demonic power.
Yeah, so lack of resistance to durability negation, I already mentioned how Yamato just completely negs it. Though if anyone wants further clarification, Judgment Cut, which is the easiest win condition that Dante has, Dante can fire a Judgment Cut at you, and it happens like instantly. Kratos would not have any understanding of what's going on because Dante would just be taking a step backwards and pulling the sword slightly out of the sheath and then closing it. Kratos in character would have, well, not even in character, even out of character, would not assume that, oh, that's going to shoot an attack. He has a katana that's going to shoot an attack that fires a slash from across a plane of existence that can cut through time and space. He would have no way of knowing that this is the case. And then
Let's
he
be
does one attack, and it would chop him completely in half.
let's be completely honest on how he would react to that as a warrior. He would see Dante taking the stance, and his instinct would be to block.
Well, so first of all, I'm talking about Dante taking a stance when Dante's across the room.
No,
Judgment
no,
is a
I'm just
ranged
saying, like,
attack.
I'm just saying, like, if Kratos sees the stance and he's never experienced the attack before, his instinct as a warrior will be to try and block it.
Well, so if we give him the benefit of the doubt, we'd be assuming that he thinks a ranged attack is coming, that it's going to come out of the sheath.
Well, no,
So,
no, no. Just by Dante moving, Kratos will most likely get into a defensive position.
well, so he'd be taking a stance backwards to the sheath. Sure, you can say he get into defensive position, but at this range, Dante's like 20 or 30 feet away from him. So,
Let's assume he's not 20 or 30 feet away from him.
Oh,
so
by
he
all
what
means,
he's like. Well, so if he's if he's in close, then Yamato just cuts through anything in Kratos' arsenal. That's
yeah, no.
consistently been the case of that. If he is at 20, 30 feet, he wouldn't be able to react to Judgment Cut anyway. Also, Dante could just fire. Dante can fire Judgment Cut when he's directly in front of you. So, I mean, he can just try and do that as well. It's also worth noting that like Virgil does show this in Three's manga, but Judgment Cut doesn't require a stance. I just mentioned that because like that's how Dante perceives it. If he really wanted to like fire it without it, he could.
Well, let's
So
also take into consideration that Dante doesn't just need to do the dimensional cut. He could just use the shockwaves from Yamato alone, and it would cut Kratos clean in half, as it did to the True Hellgate in Fortuna.
yeah, he could also just use the actual blade itself. So he has like two different projectiles, one of which you can't react to, the other of which you wouldn't assume he's gonna cut you. Like Kratos has no knowledge of this blade. He's not gonna be under the impression that this is gonna matter or like this is gonna affect him to this degree. Okay, so moving on to lack of deconstruction. So why this matters, why I mentioned the heat stuff. So Dante in one's novel has a direct feat when he's in like a wounded condition and has lost like most of his energy in the fight against Gilver. That he literally itemizes Gilver with a couple bullets from Jackpot. It literally states that he wiped him molecule by molecule as his body completely evaporated. So he completely obliterated him on the atomic level. So if molten fire is enough to kill you instantly, I think getting molecularized is that what it's called? That's
Atomized.
I think getting itemized is more than enough. I think I think that's certainly easy enough, and that's just from like a wounded Dante who's way below this Dante that we're using here. So
Okay.
yeah, a couple bullets could easily itemize him at any point. So we already have win cons for Rebellion. We have win cons for Ebony and Ivory. Multiple win cons for Ebony and Ivory at this point. His demonic power, not Jackpot, Yamato. We have win cons for also Yamato can also seal him pretty easily. We have win cons for Quicksilver. We have win cons for Doppelganger. We have win cons for Cerberus. We have win cons for Devil Trigger. Um, Conceptual manipulation. So remember how I mentioned that like demonic power can like manipulate you and can like also like affect your perception and whatnot. You know what else it can do? It can transform your soul. So the soul of a human female, according to the Arachnid's description, transformed into a spider demon just by making contact with the outer crust of the demon world. So
As you do.
again, I could just argue like enough demonic energy, you could just turn him into a demon. And this is not even something that's like just from like that I could just say from that description. Most examples of humans that are like mad with power pursuits, basically trying to get power of the demons in DMC, ends up resulting in their bodies getting corrupted and becoming like super grotesque. So I would also use those as examples as well. And Dante, when he devil triggers, this is a super easy, baby easy example. Literally transforms his entire body into a coat of magic energy. So he's completely radiating with demonic power. So just being near him would just turn you into a demon. And then at that point, I can also just argue because people are going to say that Dante can't take away your name if you're not a demon. Um, that's never stated in any capacity. It's just that demons' names specifically are the source and the concept of their existence. That's not to say that he couldn't manipulate you on the conceptual level, especially since demons are vastly more powerful than humans. So it'd be kind of weird if a demon who we've already established is a way better biology and cosmology behind them than what Kratos is offering, that he couldn't conceptually manipulate Kratos. It'd be really weird for us to assume that. I would just argue he could just turn him into a demon and then take away his name. And then at that point, Kratos would no longer have any powers and would be unable to move. Which is also what happens when demons have their names taken away. As well as poison manipulation, like demonic energy can cause side effects for that. Inability to interact with shadows. Well, so Kratos demonstrates that even by God of War 3 standards, that he needs a specific item to interact with shadows. So not only would he not be able to harm the doppelganger that I mentioned, like it would just corrupt it to death. So he wouldn't even be able to touch it. Also, Kratos has no way to deal with extensive healing factors. So my opponent brought this up in the debate that the Blades of Chaos have regen negation because they burned Kratos' forearms and they never healed. So there's one problem with this. That's a small flesh. That's a small piece of flesh on his skin. That's not even like. That's not even mid-level. That's not even like low. The highest of low regen. You would have to demonstrate that it could stop like a healing factor like Dante's, which bare minimum is medium level regen. Dante technically, in terms of like biological regen, would have to have the highest one since his atomic like deconstruction feats would have to scale to Virgil, since Virgil would have also had to fought and endure those bullets that would have itemized him. He can also regenerate his soul from being like consumed and eaten by the Soul Eaters and being irradiated and drained away by the Neo Haywire generator. So like, um, yeah, not to mention like as a pure demon, as a pure demon's form, he would also have access to like, I mean, the ability to regenerate his soul in any capacity, with it being the fundamental basis of his existence, would technically be mid-godly regen, because he's literally regenerating something beyond just the soul. He's regenerating the concept and the foundation of his existence. So you, in no fucking capacity, would be able to prove that the Blade of Chaos has a regen negation factor that is that high. Then there's the fact that his healing factor just doesn't exist to this extent. He could be killed by having his head cut off or his limbs cut off. And Yamato is more than capable of doing that. Rebellion is more than capable of doing that. Several of his other swords are more than capable of doing this. He also dies to impalement. So, like, again, any one of Dante's attacks could do this. So, inability to fly, I mentioned this. He won't be able to chase Dante when Dante goes into the air. Dante can also defy the laws of physics and can do whatever the fuck he wants. I know people say that Kratos can as well, but Kratos doesn't have the ability to fly in any capacity, nor has he shown this. And he consistently shows anti-feats this at all times, even when he gets the wings of Icarus. Because even the wings of Icarus only give him the ability to glide, and we're talking about a version that doesn't even have them. He literally has to use grappling points with the Blades of Chaos to get through most levels in the game. And to travel through most places in the game, and the games in general, and consistently. So he would not be able to chase Dante, who could fly into the air, even if they were at equal speed. Like, as soon as Dante takes the skies, he's out of his range. This is without mentioning that, like, Dante can glide a Devil Trigger, and then he also has access to Navon, which literally gives him just the actual ability to fly. He also can't interact with the properties of demonic power at all, and stop the status conditions. Then there's the magic stuff that I mentioned. Oh, and this last one, I don't know how many of you know this, but Dante has instinctive reaction. So DMC1's novel establishes that he can react faster than his brain can he can react faster than his brain can process information. So he effectively has ultra instinct. because he can react faster than his like brain gives his body the time to move. And like the actual that's actually what's stated in the official like translation that just says he reacted instinctively. If you go to the Japanese one, it's literally says he reacted faster than thought. So both of them confirm just literally through one version and then the other one inverts it that he can react before his body can kick in. So any opportunity that Kratos could have to take advantage of disadvantage wouldn't work. Also, if Dante ever gets damaged by him, he'll gain demonic power because demonic power is also gained by inflicting and taking damage. So every time Dante gets a disadvantage, he will just gain more power. Also, every time he bleeds, he'll gain more power because human blood is the source of demonic power. So every time he takes damage, his body has to pump blood to that portion or flesh or tissue that was destroyed. So if we're assuming they're equalized, we're gonna at least assume that Kratos is gonna attempt to get like a hit off or two, and if he does, then like, well, Dante's just gonna get vastly stronger. Um, you want to talk about Royal Guard, like how much of a difference that makes?
I'm sorry, that would imply there's a difference to be made at this point.
Damage nullification, damage.
All right, like let's say they're locked in a UFC octagon. This pretty much like Royal Guard pretty much makes it that like Kratos just can't touch him.
Oh, I would like to point out for anyone who thinks that like Kratos like being like I guess an attuned to fire would know what he's doing if he's taking a stance. In the actual cutscene in the lore of the series, Royal Guard does not have a telegraph. So in DMC1's first cutscene, or DMC3's first cutscene, when Dante's in the shop with the demons, he actually demonstrates a Royal Guard release. And he shows that basically Dante does not have to take the stance to do Royal Guard. It is not necessary for him to do it. And he can be attacked after the fact and can wait on it. It's also worth noting that his Royal Guard release can completely obliterate a person's body, like he does there. So he could just one shot Kratos immediately. That's without mentioning that he would be taking his damage, reducing it, and then giving it back to him. Also, Royal Guard's energy is fueled by rage and adrenaline, so Dante wouldn't even need to block you with Royal Guard to get Royal Guard energy. He would actually just have to take damage from you, or keep fighting and build rage and adrenaline. Or he could just get really mad and he would actually just get energy for Royal Guard. He can also perform damage conversion through ultimate and turn all of the energy or the damage that Kratos is hitting him with into life energy. And granted, Kratos probably would only fall for this like maybe once, but like that's all he would really need. Um, trying to think if there's like any other major things or circumstances that I could talk about. I mean, I guess all of his weapons could basically corrupt him.
I was gonna say let's try and not keep it redundant now.
Um, I could say that with Spiral, as well as like several of his observation abilities, he'd be able to identify that Kratos is like basically part human almost immediately, and he'll be able to know for anyone who wants to make a case for Kratos like getting away or maybe being able to hide. Dante can sense souls and your existence and your biology. He also scales the Virgil, and he also has his own feats of this, as well as your presence. So he'll know where Kratos is at all times, and he'll know if Kratos is using his clones. Also, any of Kratos' abilities. We also have to talk about why Kratos' abilities don't work on Dante. This will be the final thing in the video. So, the reason why the Ouroboros amulet wouldn't work, Dante's Quicksilver literally gives him control over time and space. So, it's stated to be a time controlling style. So, he could just nullify it like that. There's also literal like gameplay mechanics given to you in DMC3 that once you get Quicksilver, you can actually nullify Garion's time stop or time manipulation abilities. And you think this is ridiculous? Like if you think that's not fair, Garion can turn off yours too. both of you can cancel each other's. So anytime he sees the Amulet of Ouroboros, which, by the way, requires a telegraph that requires him to pull out an item and shine it up like a bright light out of his pocket and aim it at Dante. So Dante's gonna know every time he activates time manipulation when he's doing this, whereas Kratos is never gonna know when he's using Quicksilver because it doesn't have a telegraph. Um, Basically, every time he sees this, he can just deactivate it because he'll see the entire world glow in green. I would also just argue like it wouldn't be very effective, but he could just disable it. Um, the like these, I guess the Stone of Orcos, which allows him to summon a little spawn, create basically like a clone of himself to attack. He could just avoid it, or he could just summon his own doppelganger to like trash that thing, or seal it, or BFR it. You can also physically interact with it.
Also, I'd like to mention as well that like because of the cutscene that we got for Doppelganger in 3 after the battle, we can kind of make the assumption that Doppelganger can kind of just match its power to you.
Well, it's not even an assumption. We literally have feats that when Dante creates the doppelganger, he can't hurt it. It is physically able to match him completely. So I could just argue when he takes control of Kratos' shadow, because he can control all shadows, he could just make a doppelganger that not only would be invincible, but it would be scaled to Kratos' strength and his speed. And it would have all of his powers and abilities, including what Kratos hasn't even shown yet, because it also showed abilities of all of Dante's styles and his Devil Trigger, despite the fact that Dante hadn't even gone into DT. It took a one look at him and was like, I now have your Devil Trigger powers. So Dante could literally just do that, and it would be just fine. Um, as far as the lightning stuff, what's it called? I was gonna say the lightning of Zeus being able to shock Dante. Dante can deal with like I would just argue like the lightning of the underworld is simply more impressive than what Zeus can dish out. He's also dealt with lightning-based enemies before, like Nathan, and there's no stated like properties of it that would make it like specifically like stun heavy. Plus, Dante could always Devil Trigger to break anything, because Devil Trigger can also break status conditions. Even if we argued he couldn't break out of that. The Ice of Poseidon is not going to do anything. We don't have any confirmation of how cold that is. Dante would scale above absolute zero ice, and ice that can freeze your soul. And when he's in Devil Trigger, he's not even affected by this. So Ice of Poseidon's not even going to work on him. He can also just put Rebellion in front of him to deflect it, as he does in cutscene. So he could just shield it completely. He could also just cover himself in his own ice to protect from that ice. Or he could just burn it away with Agni and Rudra. As far as the Fire of Ares,
Well, we're all starting to fizzle out, so I'm gonna add one last thing.
wait. There was one thing.
Just using Artemis, he could pretty much just like fire a bullet, have a ricochet, and hit
Oh,
like a
now
weak
you're
spot.
starting to fizzle out.
Wait. There was one thing that I forgot to go over.
Are you sure?
Some people seem to mention this because they think it'll be a win con. The Soul of Hades. So they mentioned that this is a big misconception that's mentioned a lot, that like the Soul of Hades basically has soul vaporization, right? Because that's what's mentioned in its description. So Zem, would you like to join me on a journey into the fucking ascension scans?
Let me head over here then.
Yeah, so I have a video of what the Soul of Hades actually does when you attack to summon the arms that it summons. And this is technically taken from some footage I found on YouTube, but this is basically like what you can get from like a couple attacks. So the
it does
basic
say release the souls of the underworld to do your bidding. That is what the description states, and let's see what it actually does.
Yep, release the souls of the underworld to do your bidding.
Thank you, Mr.
Vapor
MK Ice and Fire.
Yes, thank you. Basically, it
He
says
does
like
he does good work with cutscenes. Leave him alone.
I'm not making a joke at him.
vaporizing souls, vaporizing enemies grants green orbs or magic orbs or whatever. Basically, people assert that as a as a result of this statement, therefore that means he is vaporizing your actual soul. So in God of War, it is consistently shown, both here in God of War One when you kill the what's it called, fucking Gorgon, or the sirens in the Desert of Lost Souls, what a soul looks like when it's actually like ethereal, right? Like it's separate from the body. And in order to establish that Kratos is actually affecting or vaporizing a soul, you need to actually demonstrate that the soul in this case is being vaporized. The problem here is that like we can't confirm that this is actually like not like just body vaporization, especially considering. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Especially,
gee.
yeah, no, I wonder why. Especially considering that even in like even in Chains of Olympus's guidebook, it establishes that the souls that Kratos sees at the end of that game, the souls that go to the underworld, actually have like physical bodies with bones and everything. So like the souls that he's summoning have still have like physical forms. Not to mention, we'd be assuming that, for starters, that a physical arm coming out of the underworld being brought back to life, or like a person having their soul go around, suddenly means that they can interact with your soul. If this is a true truth, every single spirit in fiction would qualify for having soul-based interaction or soul manipulation, and that's typically not the case. Most souls have to have like a medium or something in the fiction that they're in to just affect the material world physically, let alone on the astral plane.
So Mangler, from a comment I saw on the last video, um, this has nothing to do with Ascension Kratos, but doesn't Kratos have time traveling abilities?
No,
I love how even
no,
he's yawning.
he does not. So that's someone mentioned if he has time traveling abilities because of like well actually I don't know what the intention of the comment was. It was just pointing out that like there was a point in time when like Kratos time traveled. I don't know if this was intended to be used as like an immeasurable speed argument or if it was intended to be like time travel ability. So that only applies to that specific version of Kratos because the fates and only for some time travel abilities, like limited time travel abilities, because the portals that he uses with the Sisters of Fate only allow two jumps. So they allow a jump there and then a return jump, basically a jump to your destination and then a return jump to your a jump of your choosing. Because after this, he never demonstrates once again that he can ever use like the time portals to go wherever he wants. Because as soon as he goes from the Sisters of Fate from like the Loom Chamber to the Great War battlefield to get the Titans, he then uh, time jumps to Olympia and starts crawling up. Well, so yeah, this wouldn't my main point with the Soul of Hades is that like what it looks like is not actually soul vaporization. It literally just shows like physical souls just and spiritual souls just doing like physical damage. Nothing indicates they're actually damaging the soul at all. It's a blatant disingenuous like misrepresentation of what's happening on screen. It also wouldn't even matter if you argue that he could vaporize Dante's soul. Um, because that's an ability that only happens as a consequence of killing him. So you'd have to prove that you could actually kill Dante, and even then, vaporizing his soul wouldn't kill him. Demons don't need their souls to exist. Like the foundation of their existence is formed from the name. The soul is only formed as part of that. Still qualifies as like existence erasure to affect that, but like you have to keep in mind, demons literally leave their souls behind in the demon world all the time to come to the human world. What on earth makes you think that soul vaporization is going to kill Dante, even if he's part human?
Also, as well, something I would like to point out, because Dante can like send things back in time and all that, and just like demons can exist at any point in time. If you fail to stop the Sisters of Fate from destroying the blade that helps you defeat Ares, Kratos dies.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say technically, like Dante, Kratos has already proven multiple times. Well, he's proven this in God of War 2 as well. That like it's actually stated in the guidebook that um basically he saves what is it? It's under God of War 2 scans right now. Hang on, let me go check. Yeah, it's the most recent one. Hang on, let me jump to the most recent. Oh my god, why can't I grab that? There it is. So it's stated in the guidebook that he doesn't actually let me see in this.
Okay, I'm just gonna summarize this a little bit since he's taking a while.
He just reaches Zeus just in time to stop him from killing his past self. So it's stated that he got there in time to stop Zeus from killing him in the past. I've heard people say he has like a causality because he can survive his past self dying. This is blatantly not true. He literally stops Zeus just in time to stop him from killing his past self. Immediately after a fight from the sisters with the Sisters of Fate, in which he literally proves that if he doesn't stop them from destroying the blade, his past self gets killed by Ares, and then he immediately dies afterwards. So I could just argue Kratos could, or Dante could just do the little Back to the Future route, and he could send an attack back in time to kill Kratos, because he could just use his demonic desire to do that. Also, even if I was gonna say, even if Dante, Kratos managed to kill Dante in any capacity, like vaporize his soul, Yamato could also bring him back. Aside from his healing factor, because Yamato can also resurrect you and bring back your soul and everything, and it can also like reform your entire body and your soul, like it did with Nero as well. So it wouldn't even, and it would also revive him with like way more powers and abilities. Because at this point, it recognizes him as his wielder. And then I think I think that's mostly everything. It's like what, 10, 12 win cons? I think at least maybe 16. Someone will have to take a tally in the comments section. Yeah, like keep in mind all of this is if I equalize them, because you have to equalize Kratos. Because even if I said Kratos, even if I accept the claims that Kratos was 2C with inaccessible speed, he still gets fucking sweeped. Because Dante has way better inaccessible speed feats. More consistent ones that don't come from fake scans, mind you. Consistent 2C scaling that doesn't come from a complete misunderstanding of your cosmology. And a way better list of abilities that is not generic or obligatory elemental power. Like even Dante's obligatory elemental powers have like soul freezing, invulnerable barriers, multiple different types of projectile creation, and like soul manipulation and whatnot. Whereas like Kratos' best hacks ability literally just summons souls from the underworld. Maybe at best has some limited soul interaction. And it's like, okay, that's kind of cool, I guess. Like all of my weapons already do that. Okay. I think I have significantly talked this subject to death. For clarification of anyone wondering, like if we're gonna do like later versions of them, probably not. Maybe at some point we'll talk about like God of War 4 Kratos, but keep in mind everything that I've stated here for Ascension Kratos applies to his later versions, except for like some self-sustaining biology stuff.
We're still planning to react to a very old video.
Oh yeah, yes we will, but that's a different like context for this.
That and like personally, it'll be nice to investigate a different fucking series.
Yeah, because so these guys, I already mentioned this. I mentioned it several times actually. These guys have been doing it for like the past 3 months.
Yeah, not even that long at this point, like 4.5 months. because we started this in June. Okay, like uh, I just want to say that like it doesn't matter what version of Kratos you use from the Greek pantheon. Even the weakest version of him from DMC3 will sweep the entire cosmology in the Greek pantheon, bar none.
Oh, so long as we're not being arrogant about it.
It's not an arrogance thing. Like I'm not saying this to piss people off. I'm not saying this to make you feel uncomfortable. I'm saying this, although it certainly will piss you off or make you feel uncomfortable if you're planning on like if you really just don't like DMC and you happen to like God of War. You're definitely not going to like what I have to say. But like, again, that's just par for the course at this point, I suppose. Um, Even lesser demons have like more consistent speed feats that scale vastly higher than the vast majority of like what you have to offer. I keep in mind I didn't even use like I mean I guess I'll top this one off with just like one last scan.
2 hours and 35 minutes.
One last one. So I mentioned how demons have the ability to like move really fast, right?
Oh my god, it's the never-ending story.
So we have a demon.
I
in
wanted to try and
DMC.
upload this tonight, but that sure as hell ain't happening.
We have a demon in DMC that's the same species as Griffin, lesser demon that's one of the hunters of Pluto that's known as the Ripper. And it's stated to just be one of the many hunter races that exists among the demons and moves very fast in battle. It moves so fast that its movements are invisible to the naked eye. It can cover every inch of the underworld
So
in
it's
less
slower
than
than
a
Han.
day. So this means it can cover every single inch of every single dimension, which includes multiple infinite-sized bodies, a time-space fabric, multiple dimensions that are removed from time and space entirely, voids, and like just across time and space in its entirety. And it's not even the fastest demon in the demon world. It's not even self-actualizing speed, and it's just some fucking lesser demon. And Dante scales way above this. So this thing would speed blitz the entire Greek pantheon. No question. It would rip their hearts out before they'd even be able to perceive what's going on. Okay, I just needed to mention that. It's like, whew,
Okay.
the amount of people that seem to be under the impression of like this being like a fair.
Did you just want to rate? Did you just want to top the amount of time you did last time, just so that way someone else can put a comment saying that's even longer this time?
Oh wait. But before we end it,
Fuck off.
no. This is important. It's not a joke. If there's anything you disagree with, again, timestamp it and bullet point it and the reasons why you disagree.
Yeah, please don't waste our time. Like, give some actual valid evidence for why. Because
Like again, if you're just gonna be like screaming like children and be like, well, you're ignoring shit and like because I don't like what you've said. Again, if you have no valid arguments, and by valid arguments I mean like actually attack points. If you don't have anything, just don't say anything.
And one last thing for me, keep in mind that in order to source a counter argument against this, the amount of evidence that you have to bring would have to be greater than what I brought to the table. And that, in the context of the claims that I've made, is literally hundreds of scans. I brought over 205 scans to the debate alone, including ones that I cut just for Dante's portion, and an additional 50 to 60 for the God of War stuff. And that doesn't even include everything that I said in this video, and more information that was included as well. So we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of like 300 or more scans. So, if you're willing to like provide evidence, go right ahead.
Just
No
timestamp it and bullet point it and the reason why.
Okay, I think that's all I have to say. Sorry that took so long. I just there's a lot that needs to be covered. A lot of misinterpretations.
I still need to cook dinner.
Zim, do you have anything else you want to say before we shut this video off?
Fuck no, shit. All right. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for your time.
Wait,
As
I've got
always.
one more thing
Have
to
a nice
ask
day.
you.
Fuck off. All right. You guys take care. You know how it is.